I'm ready.
Hello, anyone who is here. Welcome to the Wind and Truth spoiler chat, where I have gathered a mighty team, a mighty force of Christian Cremling, Bookborn with a hard J, and Kyle Stormblessed, to talk about Wind and Truth and the various aspects of it. Whether was it good? Was it bad? Were all the characters secretly Cremlings? Are all the characters secretly a herald? Is everything actually just a spren? We will find out. And I have my illustrious guests who I can now introduce himself to all 16 of you, but presumably more of you watching it back later.
Who starts?
I think you start because you're on my screen directly to the side of me. And it goes clock.
Hello, I am Christian from the Lost in Roshar podcast or Lost in Discovery YouTube channel, known for my out there theories, which I shall proclaim today on this live stream. Thanks for having me, Jake.
Thank you for being here.
Hello, I'm Kyle from Read by Kyle. I thought we were going clockwise.
I said clockwise. I said clockwise, and then in my head I was like, "That's dumb. It should be like how you read a page." But I didn't say that part out loud, so then I got confused.
Anyway, she's Bookborn, and I'm Read by Kyle. There, we're done.
Done.
And here's Ben, who was almost invited, but he didn't finish the book fast enough. And then just did his own chat. We've got some Lost in Discovery fans. We've been told Christian might have some internet issues, and he was like, "Is that a concern?" And I told him that don't worry, people expect polish when they go on your channel, but there's a degree of chaos that's expected when people are on my channel. So we will just roll with it. So everyone, broadly to start, what did y'all think of Wind and Truth? Want to go counterclockwise this time?
Is that me then?
That would be you, I think.
Yeah. She's never seen a clock before.
I never have. I'm actually just like really amorphous about time, hate being on time, really think time doesn't matter. I just feel like everyone knows that's a joke, right? Okay. So I really liked it. I do think it suffered from some over-explanation, especially in the first third of the book. There was just some prose stuff that was tough for me, but I loved where everyone's stories ended up. And I think it really delivered on some really emotionally powerful moments. So overall, I thought it was very good. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
That's now you, because how clocks work.
Yeah, well, I just, how it goes. I really loved the book. I agree with most of the criticisms that I've been seeing. I think it's his clunkiest writing. Some of the humor is bad. Chapter 10 should be taken and drowned in a lake somewhere. But it just is just like 1,000 pages of just like pure Sanderlanche craziness. I agree with Bookborn that pretty much where every character ended up, I think is great. It made me excited for every other upcoming Cosmere book, which I think is a very tall ask, considering that it did mostly focus on like the people that we needed to know about. And it was at the time of reading my new favorite Stormlight book, and I've since come back down a little, and I think Words of Radiance is still number 1, and then Wind and Truth is number 2.
Nice.
I am drinking my Kyle-Aid.
I think my goblet. I forget where I put it. And last, Christian, who's the person whose opinion I know the least, because like I wasn't talking to him in person about it.
Well, I read this in isolation, and I was just like, "This is great." And then I finished the book, and I went online, and everyone's screaming that it sucks. And I was like, "What happened?" But I'm kind of like a hybrid of all of you guys. Like, the thing is, like, when I first read The Way of Kings, I was just coming back to reading after a big binge of A Song of Ice and Fire and a large fall off after that. And I was by no means like a person who necessarily cared about prose or like even understood like how to critique all of that kind of stuff. So I just enjoyed it for what it was. And then I fell into this world and started reading more broadly. And then Sanderson like became more of a plot thing for me and a world building thing for me. So on that side, I think it succeeded, but I can definitely see why people are criticizing the humor, which has never worked for me, and some of the clunky writing and the telling not showing.
I was actually told it's objectively the worst pace of the novels by someone in my comments. So that's
you're doing really good with those comments.
People are saying, "Oh, it's the worst pace," and I was like, of all the criticisms I can understand, I cannot understand. Like, there is no way I could have read that many pages in such a short amount of time. Like, if it was that badly paced. Like that's just not the right word. I understand if you have criticisms about the book, but pacing, I just don't understand it.
I think it's the best paced one. Like I think there's always movement. And I think maybe like if I was to try and like steelman why somebody would think the pacing was worse, normally the people that I've seen say that it's more so like there's a lot of like secondary characters that they don't like as much that are getting more time. So then those moments with those characters feel slower. But I'm like, I felt like there was just stuff happening all the time past like the first 2 days.
It's too paced. Like you could maybe slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Where like I was expecting some because I have some criticisms. Like I was actually expecting because Sanderson is immensely popular. I was not that I really cared that much, but I was expecting the overall criticisms I have where it's like I think Sanderson showed some of his weaknesses in these novels to get more pushback than me being like, "Hey, this book was awesome." But alas, no. But I wonder if sometimes it's confusing with pacing where it's like people just get to a point of view character they don't like as much. And they're just like, well, this is badly paced. And I guess like if you don't like the events, they feel worse paced, but like the events still happen there. So yeah, that one is very, very confusing. I feel it's pretty objectively the most content filled Stormlight book.
Yeah.
Like,
the pace was blistering because he switched POVs mid chapter for basically every chapter. So I felt like I didn't even have time to switch off. It was like
I found some people like criticizing that, and to me, like I felt like it didn't matter to me because again, I think maybe as somebody like Stormlight is my second favorite series. I like all of the POVs, except maybe Venli. But Venli was like decent in this book. But generally speaking, when I get to a new character, I'm just like, okay, now we're following this character. But I've seen people be like, oh, like it was switching POVs too much, and I'm like, that didn't bother me. But
yeah, I can see that. I think he went with like it was a more like almost every chapter was 2 point of views, but like what kept happening is there would be like the chapter would reference one of the point of views, and I'd feel bad for the other point of view because something awesome happened, and I'd be like, why didn't that get the chapter named after their thing?
Lauren's critique is exactly my critique, which is that the book is not too long, but some of the pages are in the wrong spot. Like that was exactly how I feel. Like in the beginning, there's like 50 pages of explaining that I think could be moved to the end and all put on. This is full spoilers.
Yes, yeah. You can.
If anyone's here, I'm just about to say something right at the end of the book. Give me more time with Gavinor. Like, not Gavinor. Gavilar.
That's right.
Okay.
Gavinor. Gavilar is dead. We've seen him die 5 times.
Is he? Is he dead?
Like, give me an extra 20 pages with Gavinor at the end and take out some of Szeth and Kaladin's. Not like I didn't love that plot line, but some of their discussions were like so repetitive. And so I totally agree. Like, it's not too long as a novel. It's just some of the pages are in the wrong spot for me, lengthwise.
I actually did call this a little because I was talking to Bookborn before Wind and Truth came out. I think it's because you started Defiant, or maybe I was talking about Defiant. I don't remember why. But as Sanderson has gone on, it's become more and more obvious to me how much he hates falling action. He has like he has a real problem with it, and I don't know like if it's just he thinks that people don't like it, or like I don't know why he does it. But like if you think about the endings of almost all of his series, it's just like the things happen and then they're like that was cool, and then it ends, and it's like that's pretty much been all of the endings. And I was kind of hoping
Lost Metal.
Yeah, but those are all like 2 pages. Like that's what I mean. Like it's not very much.
Like it's all epilogue. That's right. He like ends on the act, and then he's like, "Well, now I'll give you 10 epilogues." And it's like
that's true.
Yeah,
that didn't have to be epilogue.
The Lost Metal ends, and we're not doing anything with the other series, but the Lost Metal ends very much on like we've just did the thing, and then it's over. True. So, and I kind of hoped Wind and Truth being like a halfway point would have maybe not done that. So I do agree it kind of wrapped up a little too quick.
Yeah, I want to bring this up because this was actually, I think, the first time in a long time for Stormlight where I had a moment near the end where like Adolin and Kaladin were doing stuff where I was actually like, oh crap, is he going to kill him? And that doesn't, like, usually I don't think, like, usually when I'm reading an action scene, I'm actually not worried about the characters dying. I mean, like, you know, ideally I am, but most of the time I'm just like, oh, this is cool. Like, how are they going to get out of it? And this actually, like, a couple times I was like, wait, is Nail just going to like, I mean, I don't remember if it was the Nail one, but I think it might've been like, is Nail just going to like kill Kaladin here? And I think it might have been with the, like, you know, the end with Adolin when he goes all like,
There was like 6 times in this book I
with
thought Adolin was going to die.
yeah, like I thought
Yeah.
the Thunderclass would be about to kill him. And
That's
then,
what
like,
I thought
when they
too,
originally
yeah.
gets overrun. I didn't think the Monarch was going to kill him in the final one. I was like, he's winning this at this point.
Yeah, once the leg happened, I'm like, okay, so that's the thing. And then he'll be okay.
Well,
you
what's
know?
so interesting about that Adolin moment is I do think it's one of the best parts of Sanderson's writing is when he does something and you know the way he writes that something has to happen, but you just are unsure how. So Kyle and I talked about this. Like when Adolin lost his leg, I was like, there's no way that's getting healed. Like I can just tell by the way he's writing it that it's not going to get healed, but I am uncertain how that's possible. I can't see how Adolin is going to make that a part of his identity. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like I won't believe it.
And it's so short of a time too. I was like, well, how is he going to like just come to terms with this in like 2 days or whatever? And then, you know, they just lose Stormlight. I'm like, oh, all right. That's one way. Yeah.
So
and also even like the doctor had the thing of like, you know, of trying to coach him to like think of the peg as if it was like his leg. And I was like, no, stop. But also I was like, this isn't enough. Like he's not going to internalize this. So I was exactly the same. Like when he lost that leg, my first reaction was like, oh crap, like Adolin's not like that's going to be so interesting. And then I was like, but Renarin's just going to heal it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get past that. Christian, were you worried about, you had a poll about how many people you thought were going to die. So it was on your mind. Were you?
Oh, I did have that poll.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of deaths, and yeah, we're full spoilers.
Yes.
This is maybe one of my only sort of controversial takes, but I kind of didn't feel all that much with Dalinar. Is that bad?
I was like expecting him to die the entire time.
Dalinar is my favorite character in the series, and I didn't really like. I cared intellectually. I'm like, oh no, Dalinar's dead, but I didn't feel in the moment. I honestly, I think I felt more when like Sigil renounced his oath than when Dalinar died, which is crazy to me.
I think it's because we all somewhere deep down maybe thought Dalinar was going to not make it out. Like
it was also very fast.
Because of the
it wasn't
context.
Deep down. I've been telling people. He's
and I think you're right, Kyle. Like I think that is part of the thing. Like the end happens so quickly. You don't have time to process. It's kind of like, okay, well, the end of Mistborn. Like there's some things that happen at the end of Mistborn. This isn't a full Mistborn spoilers, but where it's like you don't really like you don't feel a ton of emotion for some things that happen at the end of Mistborn because it's so close to the end. It's like we don't have to miss story without Dalinar. Like we might miss Dalinar more when we get Stormlight 6. Right? But like this felt like an ending and then like he dies in the last like 30 pages.
Also, I think it's more like the way he died because he just basically wanders out and like how he dies is very noble, but like written on the page, he's just like, I figured it out. Sunmaker's gambit, and then he just wanders off into a storm, and then later on, Odium's like, he's dead. So
yeah,
it's like, you know,
also it's kind of like I didn't realize, and then they're like, oh yeah, Dalinar's gone. I'm like, wait, is he? Like, did I miss?
Also,
I still don't think he died. Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
I also think a lot of the time when like one of the reasons it's sad when characters die is you feel like they had more to do. This is why Elokar hits like.
Right.
Elokar dying hits harder than Dalinar dying, even though like I care a lot more about Dalinar than I do about Elokar. But that's because like when Elokar dies, like there's such a sense that like he had so much potential. I feel like Dalinar kind of realized his potential. Like he can die being like, yeah, I did kind of what I set out to do. In a kind of weird roundabout way, but like, you know, we got it done.
Can you highlight Pete's comment real quick? The Blackthorn one, how contentious it is.
Oh yeah, I didn't like this.
I've thought about this more, and I think maybe I was talking to Christian about this. Maybe this was I don't remember who it was, but I think it would have been a lot better if instead of him straight up telling us it was the Blackthorn, if when like Taravangian's thinking, you know how like the end of Rhythm of War when he like re-examines the contract, he's like, oh, but wait, actually there's a hole I can, and then he never actually tells you what his plan is. He just realizes there's a plan. I think he should have done the same thing with Dalinar, where he's getting all mad and he's like, oh no, Dalinar. He's dead, and then he's like, "Oh wait, is there? I could possibly that stupid idiot." And then we don't know what he did, but it at least set up that he had a plan. And then in like Elantris 3 or whatever, we just get a Blackthorn, and we're like, "What is going on?" The Blackthorn. So like, I think that would have been a better way of handling it because it muted the impact of Dalinar dying so much.
Yeah, so that's why I didn't like the Blackthorn thing. I also am just like. I was expecting so many answers about the spiritual realm and I didn't necessarily get them. And so to have this happen, I was like, well, I don't know enough about the spiritual realm for this to really hit well for me personally. I just like, I'm a little like, well, he can just do that, I guess. So I don't know. I didn't feel great about it. I'm not like upset about it either. I was just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, for me, it was just kind of one of the moments that happened.
Yeah, when I spoke to you about it, Kyle, you kind of did the Elantris 3 pitch to me. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. But then I'd be reading Elantris 3 and be like, oh, he didn't really kill Dalinar. Now I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
You know? So it's almost like he's like softened the blow, or like eased me into the idea at least. But again, it does take away from it.
There's just so many ways it could go that like I'm honestly reserving judgment. Like I think like right now I don't think it's a great decision, but maybe it'll end up being something super cool. But we'll find out in 15 years.
Also,
so
I'm just gonna note I just don't agree with this more than like I don't think Sanderson is like the best character voice person ever, but I just don't think Kaladin sounded like Lift. I don't think the character voice writing was...
There's one point. This is reminding me of one thing I really disliked about the end. This is the first time ever I felt that Sanderson cheapened a very emotional moment. Because I feel like he's really known for his emotional moments at the end of all of his books. And one of my favorite moments is Kaladin's ending. I mean, it's just like so emotional. And then he stands up and says the line, "I'm his therapist." And I wanted to tear my hair out. I hate that line so much. And it comes off the heels of such a like emotional moment. Why did you put in a joke? And I was so shocked that Sanderson didn't let that moment stand, because like every other book has like, you can't have my pain. There's no joke to take away from that scene. There's no joke to take away from when Syl goes back to Kaladin and he says the oath. So I thought it was super out of place that he cracked a joke at like probably the peak emotional moment of the book for me. So like that's in one moment I could see someone saying that sounded like a... Do you think
it is a joke for sure? Like maybe it's just comical.
I didn't read it as a joke. That's
like I didn't read it as a written joke. I read it as something like it was corny, but like I think it's supposed to be like he's like him. I think the narrative reason that is there is that it's supposed to be him accepting his role as Kaladin's therapist, and we're all just collectively like, but like it's not.
I didn't
he's
think
not a therapist.
I was kind of like Kaladin's obviously like the thing is it reads so differently from our perspective than like what Kaladin would intend it from his perspective. Yeah. So it's kind of tricky.
I almost wanted it to be the word like I'm his friend.
Because like he doesn't know what therapist means.
Yeah, therapist is the word. Like it's the word he used. I hated it so much. It was like
I think the whole word should have been just not in it, because it sets up the expectation of like an actual therapist, and it doesn't.
Yeah,
work.
This is where a lot of the like discussion's getting messy, because he learns the term from Hoid, right? So he's just like, I'm his therapist. I don't even know what that means. So if in that way, it kind of works. But just seeing the word, it just feels a bit odd.
Yeah, and it's funny because I have never complained about Sanderson's prose in like almost any other book. Just actually Defiant was the only one. But I've never complained about it. I don't care that he uses modern terms for the most part. It does not bother me. This was the first book, and I think it's because of that line that like I noticed. And so that was strange for me. That's never been a criticism I've had before.
Yeah, I mean, so me and Kyle talked about this during the preview chapters like a good bit, and I think we both agreed it is like his prose was noticeably worse. Like he repeats more stuff in this. Yeah, like I agree. That's one of my like this would probably be my favorite Stormlight novel if I thought the line by line writing was as good as the previous 4 Stormlight novels.
There's nothing wrong with the plot of this novel. Like the plot of this novel has so many good moments, but the writing is a step down for some reason.
I think
there are like a couple moments where I'm kind of like whatever, but they're like super minor, and most of them are insane though. And we're gonna start going through the plots actually after whatever Kyle says.
I was just gonna say the worst moment. Like, I mean, it's not like the moment I hated the most in the book, but the most I felt that this like just needed another pass is when they're going to infiltrate some shit, and Gaz, who's barely in the 4th book, so you're working off him from books 1 through 3 mostly, and then he's there, and then he just kind of stops in the middle of his mission. He's like, yeah, you know, gambling is it's just a really hard thing for me to I just really, you know, if it wasn't for all of my homies, if it wasn't from all my home skillets, like I just wouldn't be getting through this. And then Shallan stops what she's doing and she's like, yeah, homie, like we just G now, we just like get you through this, dog. And then they're like, "Oh yeah, thank you so much." Like, we're in the middle of doing stuff, guys. We're in the climax of stuff. Could we? And I cannot believe that got through all the editing. Like,
yeah, we talked about how I think because the first book I ever noticed it in was Defiant, which I read way later than when it came out. By the way, I only read that like a couple months ago because I didn't like Cytonic, but that's a whole nother thing. But and it was the first book I was like, Sanderson's over explaining himself. And I know that it has to be recent because at first I was like, oh no, is it because I've read A Song of Ice and Fire? Like, did it like ruin me? Like I had this brief moment, but then I was like, no, I read all the secret projects and I didn't feel like he was over explaining himself in any of those. So like, it's just a few recent projects and we're not so far away. I think we need to bring it back.
So I can say
notice the criticism.
Yeah,
So
he mentioned it. I don't know if you saw his Reddit comment in response where he kind of describes what went wrong, I think, better than I did. For this
who's Reddit comment?
Sanderson. Like Sanderson has
okay.
where he was kind of like, yeah, like because someone was like, yeah, like you don't get it enough. He's like, I'm edited more than now ever, but he's like, we did lose Moshe, who was specifically like really good at line by line editing. And he's like, I have noticed like
I didn't know they lost him. I'm a fake fan. How did I not know that?
You are a fake fan. He hasn't done it since Oathbringer.
Yeah, he's been gone. Yeah. So I'll say for this, and Cal can say whether he agrees with this sentiment. I'm pretty sure he does. I reread Rhythm of War after reading all of the pre-release chapters, and I did not notice the decline. I think like Rhythm of War is written at a line-by-line level as well as any Sanderson novel, which is what I believed when I read it. So it was nice to go back and be like, yeah, this is true. I did notice it in The Lost Metal, and I didn't notice it in any of the secret projects. But it's hard to tell if I would have noticed it in Frugal Wizard, because that book's just busy being mid. So it's like hard to tell if that would have been the cause. So I can't say for sure.
Frugal Wizard.
I actually think I did notice it in Frugal Wizard a little bit, because one of my reasons for not liking Frugal Wizard is him just being like, why are you doing that? And then people just be like, I feel this way, and this guy's the guy, and I'm like, you're just talking a lot about your feelings now. But I totally agree with Jake. I noticed it in Lost Metal. I think I noticed it a little bit in Yumi, just like a little. And then I like Rhythm of War. I finished rereading 3 weeks or 2 weeks before Wind and Truth, and that book is not like it's the same level as Sanderson's always been. Like I don't think it's worse at any like
and it's like
moment.
It's better than early Sanderson, but it's like the same level of writing as like the other Stormlight books or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I was coming off the back of a Way of Kings reread, and I mean, there's a stark difference, at least in my opinion, from Way of Kings to this. And I think there's just like I think everyone agrees that Way of Kings and Words of Radiance is like the writing sweet spot for Sanderson, and I feel like he's just become a bit more casual over time. It just depends on how much that bothers you.
There's also something I notice, which I think probably people agree with. Like, it does depend a bit on point of view, and by that I mean there are 2 point of views where I don't have this problem at all, and that's like Szeth and Taravangian. Like the Szeth chapters, I didn't like notice the line by line, like the writing at all. And I also think those 2, other than Lift due to a technicality, have the most distinct character voices. Lift just because she's over the top, but those 2 without being over the top, I think have the most distinct character voices he's done. And I wonder if the focus on that and that being a thing like helped in some way, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, and I also wonder, there's a couple things I've wondered. One, he, I think, felt so energized by the secret projects. Like when you heard him describe that whole thing, you could tell he felt so energized just like writing a bunch. And I wonder if that energy has made him feel like I can just write that much all the time. And a Stormlight book is hard. He's said that before. And I do think he's tired. Like part of me really wonders if this like super long break from Stormlight is going to help with some of these issues, because he didn't want to work on it anymore. Part of me believes that. Like there could be no truth to that. But part of me is wondering if he was just like, I am so tired of writing this like very difficult and very long book. I don't want to edit it anymore. Because like I could see that. I'm not saying that's what happened.
He did say like after Rhythm of War, which is right when I was first getting into the fandom, he did say like, oh yeah, like Stormlight books are hard, and like he's like, this was a big project, but the things he said after Wind and Truth, or like right before, were just it felt very different to me. He did feel like this was a really hard book to finish. Like it was a lot of work. It does feel like he's exhausted.
Yeah, and it's like but it's like he also couldn't move it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like Sanderson is so big on deadlines. He's so big on I can do it. He also had an entire con planned around the release of this book.
He gave himself an extra year from the original plan.
Right. And he'd already done that. I don't know if he felt like he could be like, and I need another year for edits. And like, I get that. I don't know. I also wonder if like so many people have been talking about how important Stormlight is to them because of the mental health representation and other things like that. I wonder if that's also started to contribute to this over-explanation.
That was my theory.
He really wants to be sure that people feel properly represented. He doesn't want to make mistakes or make these things, and he wants everyone to understand. And that's something a lot of authors have. I've complained about this a lot. Like, sometimes you just have to let your audience maybe not understand stuff, like at the expense of better writing.
So that was my original thought. My original theory was out of the
came up with
good desire to like have representation. Instead of like before, when he was putting representation, he'd take things he's heard and he'd translate it more through the lens of the character. And whether it was more just like directly taking the feedback he'd gotten, slightly inspired by something Isaac, the co-founder of the Simon Fraser University Sci-Fi Fantasy Book Club, said as well. So he gets partial credit. Although he hadn't said it for Wind and Truth, he said it as a concern in the past. So yeah, I think that might be the case. I'm glad he like saw it and has acknowledged it, and hopefully it's not a thing in the long term.
I love how we just had like a half an hour tribunal about maybe why he's not as good as he was. Like, the new topic is Sanderson washed and why?
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is we all really liked the novel, but I think
we're all reacting to the last month of hearing people be like, "This is trash."
Yeah, we're still reacting to like,
But I also want to say, like, I have a lot of what I like to call normie Sanderson fans, which are Sanderson fans who are only like very lightly in the fandom. Like, they're on Reddit, maybe they know what's going on, but they're not like, I don't know. They're not like us. We have channels. Like, we're really like in it.
They're not like us.
And
this was hilarious.
All of them seem to really enjoy Wind and Truth. Like, no one in my real life has messaged me and been like, this was the most disappointing thing ever. Most of them have been like, wow, this was amazing. Like, they have quibbles, of course. Like, we all have quibbles, but like, they're like, this was great. And so it's so interesting coming online and seeing like such a different experience. I'm not sure how much of it is just the way online conversations tend to
magnify
magnify things. I don't know.
So also, there's a book release that this experience really reminded me of. It's for a book that I think is worse. But that's that when Peace Talks came out, a bunch of Dresden Files fans freaked out. Like, there were people unironically being like, Peace Talks is the crossroads of Twilight of Dresden. We're going to have to warn people about it like every time. Has anyone since then ever heard a warning about how terrible Peace Talks is? Like,
Peace Talks pretty good.
Yeah, it's just like, it's okay. It's not as good as Skin Game. Whatever. Like, we can move on. People read it. Like, usually when new people read it and they didn't wait for it for 6 years, they just read it and they go like, yeah, that was really good. I'm going to read Battleground now. And this reminds me of that, where it's just like, by the way, I'll note that a bunch of people on Jimmy's Discord liked it, and series they like include Malazan Book of the Fallen, Terra Ignota by Ada Palmer, and Prince of Nothing by R. Scott Baker.
Also,
so kindly fuck off.
We all have so much. Like, we all like whatever.
Also, by the way, if you like Sarah J. Maas,
Sarah J. Maas is not that bad. Like, relax.
Whatever. I mean, I don't.
I've never read it. I have no skin in this game.
Anyway, but those damn normie Terra Ignota fans just enjoyed some of this more. Whatever. So there are a bunch of plots in this book. Do we want to? Is anyone wants to specifically talk about first?
Derek, I have to disagree. Derek, I just got to say this. Anything George R. R. Martin comes out with, unless it's perfection, is going to be crapped on by everybody. There is so much expectation for that book. I mean, not from me. I'm going to love whatever he puts out because I've only read it for a year. But I'm just saying, like, this is totally incorrect. People are going to be so hard. Like, if there's a single chapter that doesn't move the plot forward, people are going to be like, he's going to need 10 more books to finish A Song of Ice and Fire. It's never going to happen. Anyway, sorry. Jake,
Kyle,
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Kyle, what's your line about you're gonna have to do when Winds of Winter comes out?
I don't know what my line was, but I'm gonna not talk to the internet for damn sure. Like, I'm just gonna read the book and delete
Kyle,
everything.
you and I can just talk, and we'll be like, "It's so amazing, isn't it?" I love it.
Yeah, I'll just get like together like a core group of elites like Dalinar to keep this Stormlight related.
Yeah.
And those elites and I will talk about the series, and I will never look online for like a full year, and then
Yeah, that book launch is just going to be impossible. You have to switch off. You have to get a log cabin.
Also,
Somebody
my favorite thing to do when I don't like a book is to pretend that everyone who likes it is a normie and is worse than me, by the way. Doesn't that make you feel like such a good person when you do that and not a waste of space?
So that means everyone who disliked Feast for Crows is objectively wrong. And
Anyway.
True.
are
They
Bye
are
now.
objectively wrong.
They're
Have fun.
normies. Jake, you're a normie.
That's okay.
Okay.
You waited so long to ban that
Plotline.
guy. I thought you were gonna ban him earlier.
Yeah, I don't want to ban people immediately. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves first, you know?
Okay,
Somebody
plotline,
did
Jake.
mention the music. No, I have one more thing. This is actually on topic for real. Somebody mentioned the humor earlier, and like I said it right when I started that I didn't like the humor as much. I also think there were some of the funniest Sanderson moments ever in this book. Like I do think there was like different types of humor, and I just want to point that out because we all talk about how his humor doesn't work, but like actually, like, you know, Pattern is always hilarious. You know, like Wit had some good stuff. Like there is some really funny moments in this book.
Kyle,
Yeah,
it was like
and
your
the
own
spoon was
personal
hilarious.
monkey paw because you had to have chapter 10, but yet you also feel like there were some of the funniest moments. So, you know, it's like
Chapter 10 is
It's
just
rough.
I'm so mad that some people find that funny. Like I'm like, hey, that's the only time where I'm like, this got through the beta readers because not enough of them were like, I'm about to set this book on fire. Like that should have been every single one of the beta readers' reactions, and the fact that it wasn't makes me upset. But okay, we can go to plots now.
But who knows? Maybe 98% of them did. And then the 2% were just like, that was so funny. And Sanderson was like, I don't want to delete it for that 2%. But he actually, I confirmed, he asked multiple beta readers, like, why didn't you stop this?
I did. We met beta readers on the first night of Dragonsteel, and I said to their faces, I was like, in chapter 10, there's a really bad joke with Syl. Did you tell him not to do this?
Yes.
Yeah, if there was one moment where I read the book and was very worried, it was that scene. And it was just
Yeah.
week by week. I'm like, oh man, chapter
Yeah.
10.
Chapter-
luckily I didn't read any of those preview chapters until right before I knew I was getting the book. And Kyle had already warned me. He was like, you need to not have a total meltdown. You need to understand, here's the joke, and you're going to hate it. And so, like, I had all this time to prepare, and so it was fine when I got there.
So I think we should continue by hearing, to move to a plot line to assign it at random. Christian has cooked something up.
Oh, yeah,
And
I have.
I
Don't
would
build up
really
too
like to
much.
hear what it is, and then whatever plot line it relates to, we can then talk
It's
about.
a
And we
plotline
can
no one's talking about.
decide if Christian cooked or not.
Okay.
We await.
Okay,
You have the
what
floor.
plotline is nobody talking about?
Let's
Well,
find out instead of
alright.
questioning.
One at a time. Okay. So I was wanting to make a video for all the death rattles now because like part 10 was just death rattle after death rattle chapter title. So I had my Word document, I had all the death rattles and I was lining them up to like everything, felt good. But then there's chapter titles in part 10 that didn't match up to death rattles. So I'm like, what are they about? And if you're a true fan, you know that the blurbs of all the books are written by the Cremlings, the sleepless hive mind. They're all watching them. And then I realized there are 4 chapter titles in part 10 referring to the blurbs of each respective Stormlight book to this point. So like there's one that references the blurb of the Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and so on. So I was like, okay, so are the sleepless were they actually aware of what was to come, or are they creating these chapter markers or something like that? And I was really excited because it was Kremling relevance. But then it went a step deeper where I was like, there's still more chapter titles that I got to check out. And I checked out another one and it refers to, maybe I should pull it up to be a bit more specific because it just sounds like the ramblings of a madman right now.
It does a little bit, but I'm
It's
going to let
okay.
you cook.
I'm
I'm going to trust you to rein it in.
I'm with you. I'm
All right,
waiting.
Sound like Graham Hancock out here.
All right. For example, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say one, for example. So chapter 126 was called That Which He Must Not Know. The Oathbringer blurb says, and finally the king, broken by war, he seeks the past, that which was abandoned, that which he must not know. So they're like direct quotes, right?
Okay.
And then there's a chapter called Light Flickering in the Darkness. And that was referring to a conversation Renarin had with Taravangian, saying he's like worried about him. Your future's not like anything I've seen before, except there's a point of light flickering in the darkness. So I was like, oh, so all of these are referencing like seeing the future. We've got Death Rattles, we've got the Sleepless, we've got Renarin, and there's one other referring from a conversation with Hoid and Shallan. And then this is the cherry on top. This is when I messaged you, Jake. I'm like, dude, I got something good. One, what can we talk about other Cosmere stuff? I'm so excited. Because this is like where
How
it came.
spoilery is it? Probably.
It's pretty bad. It's a Mistborn thing. Let's just say,
Well, here, just do this. Christian, do this. Okay, Mistborn, you need to mute it right now. Mute it right now, and then
Arrow one.
You'll put a Mistborn spoiler up, and then when the banner is removed, you can come back.
Bookborn live streams.
Okay. So then there's one called Fear What Is Coming. And I was looking for like Fear What Is Coming and all across Stormlight. Nothing came up. But go to the Hero of Ages. And you know how the Lord Ruler left like those caches behind with like the lost medals and the ones that specifically help you see the future? And he leaves a letter with the direct quote, I fear what is coming. And it's the only time that direct quote can be found anywhere on the Coppermind. I didn't go through every book. I'm not a complete psycho yet, but it was the only spot that direct quote has shown up. So yeah, that's it.
Is there
you're not impressed? The pieces
to be fair,
together.
This is
there
very
an
cool.
conclusion?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a theory. I think this is just some observations.
Where's Jimmy?
We can put the banner away, right?
Yeah.
We do need Jimmy for this specifically.
Where's Jimmy? Hype me up, man. No, look, I'm just saying, like, what struck me most about that is like the Sleepless. Like, it felt really odd that their quotes were being thrown in the chapter titles too. I think like it's a background plot. I didn't really understand that they were seeing the future, because on the back of the Wind and Truth blurb, it actually says we lost the ability to do that. So that's pretty interesting. So
that is interesting.
Wait, what is the back of the? I haven't read the Wind and Truth blurb because I don't read blurbs anymore.
Like at the end of it, they basically said, "Oh, we've lost the ability to see the future. We don't know what's going to happen."
Okay.
I mean, the Cremlings are doing
it. Is not the end we hope for. We have lost our ability to see what will happen. For a challenge has come that none of us anticipated. For the power of honor has begun to question. That's really cool after reading the book. Like now I know what that means.
So like the Sleepless know about baby honor, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my little moment.
Really cool. That's a really cool.
That is really cool. I'm not like I'm building you up. That was very cool of you to notice, and I'm so interested in the Sleepless, and I'm kind of annoyed that he gives us one little Sleepless tidbit every 5 years. It's like, bro, just give me some more information.
I'm working on it. Don't worry.
But the thing is, by him not giving me any information, that way, whenever people are like, "Oh, Sanderson's not subtle. He can't hide anything," I can immediately ask them. It's like, "Oh, what did you think of the army of sentient, like Cremlings that form bodies, can see the future, and are spying on everyone?" And they can be like, "Wait, what?" And I'll be like, "Oh, you missed that. I guess it happens."
Sanderson's like I always say, like Sanderson's best skill is that he can keep foreshadowing, and you still don't see something coming until like 3 pages before it happens. Like there are so many times where I figure something out, but it's like, a couple paragraphs before it happens. So people who act like he's not good at that, that's cool. Factually incorrect. There's a lot of things I can understand people dislike about Sanderson, but that's definitely not one of them.
So there's a few ways we can. That didn't help me pick a plot to go through, by the way, at all.
Kremlin. Are you a Kremlin? Are you?
You know, like the internet cuts out. You know, like.
Yeah.
If the internet cuts out, it's the Sleepless. They're actually real.
Hiding behind like the obvious. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Kremlin." Ha ha ha.
Yeah.
Actually, the reason the Kremlings are subtle is because the Kremlings are real and they have Sanderson hostage, and he's trying to tell us this, but if he makes it too obvious, they'll know. So,
because like I have a question for you guys. Do we know why the chapter headings crumbled? Besides, it's cool.
I thought it was the dissolution of the Oath Pact, but then I was shocked because when they did the Oath Pact again, I was like, "Oh, the next chapter, it's going to be like built again," and then it wasn't. So I don't know. That made it like not what I thought, but I thought it was the dissolution of the Oath Pact.
By the way, when you say I don't know how people, Christian is people. That's the man right there who did it. So
they know how to read.
You're talking to the right people.
I didn't.
Did you come up with the one of
No.
these series? Okay,
No,
I wasn't
but
sure. I know that I heard them from you, but I
I
wasn't
latched
sure.
on for dear life to those theories. I don't know where it's been a while. The Baby Champion one was nowhere near as big a few years ago. But the Shallan Herald one was really went into second gear after the prologue came out a few years ago when they're like,
Yeah,
oh,
that's the one where like the thing is that that's the one when I heard it, I was just very sure it was correct because I'm like, this sounds correct and it like narratively is satisfying. The Gavinor one is is satisfying in a way, but if he had went a different way, I also could have seen that just as easily.
Yeah.
Like the Channa being Shallan's mom theory, I'm just like, this just feels right. So I actually got really excited when like usually when a theory is almost correct, it makes it less good to get the confirmation. But the way that reveal was like teased out throughout the book, where she kept like first she missed her and then she saw her and she like I was like oh, we're gonna get this reveal. So like it was kind of fun that way.
Yeah, and that was one of the theories that the minute it said and they talk about that line like the end of the world and it's all Shallan's fault, you're like, that's exactly how Sanderson foreshadows things. Like it was just so like that is exactly how Sanderson would have foreshadowed that. It just rang too much true. But Jake, we haven't talked about a single plot point.
Yeah. So
We've talked about a couple.
Adolin did stuff in this book, and some city got besieged, and that was pretty cool.
What was the name of the city, Jake?
As we all know, Azamir. Okay.
You've read these books how many times?
Yeah, I'm
Wow,
bad
what
at
have you been
names.
calling
I've
it?
never claimed otherwise. I knew there was an A in there and that there was a Z. I knew the letters.
I'm just
didn't know
making
what
fun of
order
him
to
because
put
he
them in.
doesn't remember names very well. That's it. I'm just
Yeah. Is there
that-
a J in there somewhere? How do we pronounce that?
This was one of Adolin's best plot lines, in my opinion.
I
One
super
of-
agree.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's
Yeah.
his best book. Like it's really good.
In my head, I was like, do I start with the most important plot line, the best plot line, or the worst plot line? And I went with the best plot line. And that's why we are starting with Adolin, which this has been like the one where in the comments, the people are like, this book sucks. They're like, Adolin was pretty cool though. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you know what? At least we can acknowledge that.
This Adolin's plot point was the only, well, not the only time. There's a couple times where I could tell that Sanderson was limited by the 10-day arc. I do ultimately really like that he chose the 10-day thing because I think it brought a sense of urgency to the novel that I really enjoyed. But Adolin's interactions with, I'm not going to say the name right, you know.
The Emperor.
Yes, the Emperor. Thank
He
you.
has a title.
Yanagon.
Yanagon,
Gox.
whatever.
I still call him Gox in my head.
Gox. There you go, Gox. Like it felt a little rushed. Like I was having a hard time believing this was happening in like the time frame it was happening in. That was hard, but overall, like Adolin's plot line was just so great. It was so satisfying.
It's such a great aspect of like the struggle against the inevitable. Like I like how it just felt like it was such a grind and how they were just trying to like hold together and like the desperation. And yeah, I really loved the conversations with the Emperor. And think like this book, I think, did a really good job of focusing on characters who haven't got as much focus. And I think a lot of people have complained about that. But I think someone else pointed out earlier that like a lot of the main characters' like main emotional journey, like Kaladin's big emotional moment was swearing the fourth ideal, and he's still obviously doing stuff, but that was his biggest hurdle to go over. And I thought a lot of the strongest stuff was coming from the new people. And I love I love the scene where he's just like, I don't like the oaths. And he's never said that out loud. And I was just like,
that was a great scene.
And
Also, I agree with.
Sorry, go Kyle.
I was just gonna say I agree with Ben. Like, so I also agree with Bookborn that the Yanagon stuff feels a little rushed for what they're trying to do. But I just like, I'm like, fine, they have 10 days. But I actually think it was way more realistic how he won over the commander, where the commander's like, who's this like prissy little bitch from over there? Sorry, Jake, if you don't like swearing. That doesn't know our culture. And then like by like day 4, he's like, what do we do, man? Like, and I'm like, this feels very realistic to me. And I loved the like interactions between those two.
So once upon a time, this was not relevant.
What?
To you. What I was about to say was not relevant.
I was just going to say, like, Adolin's whole thing has been like, do you like how I keep saying Adolin versus Adolin? I'm halfway through the transition.
Sometimes in the same
right.
sentence, yeah.
Yeah. I'm halfway through the transition of like maybe converting, but then like I'm like, no, I shouldn't. I should stay strong. I felt it was really satisfying because his whole arc has been like, well, I'm normal, and everyone in my life is suddenly becoming radiant. Like Kaladin's radiant, and then now my wife's radiant, and my dad's radiant, and my aunt's radiant, and my
brother,
and my brother. Like literally,
his horse.
Everyone's radiant. Like,
some punches friends, some of the Cobalt card.
Everyone is special but him, and I've always liked that arc. But I do think like the whole thing about the oaths, and like someone said in the comments, him and Maya's relationship is so earned from literally book 1. Like I just really thought it was such a satisfying ending to him being like, I don't even want to be radiant. Like, I don't agree with it. I don't want it. And it just, I don't know. I really liked it.
Yeah, like how Adolin was like, if you gave him the like dilemma or whatever, like if he was like, you got to duel Gavinor to like save the world, he'd be like, sorry, man.
Yeah, it was
sometimes
very...
you gotta... like
it's a good thing he wasn't the champion.
Well,
and him being in that the shield line was really actually like quite poignant. Like being like, oh, this is what it feels like to be even more normal. Like I thought I was normal, but now like I'm injured and I don't have plate and I don't have Maya, and like this is what everyone feels like. I thought it was a very good moment.
That's some of his like best writing, I think. Like when I read like Bernard Cornwell, like nobody makes me feel like I'm like, wow, I would get killed in battle so quickly than Bernard Cornwell. Like I'm so aware that I'm like, this sucks every single time there's a battle. And that's the only time I've ever felt that while reading Sanderson. I'm like, oh, this is like on the boots, dirty, filthy, grimy fighting.
Chapter 1 of the Way of Kings.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had a perspective like that.
I don't think so, because it wasn't quite as visceral.
Yeah,
but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you guys are saying about Adolin as a character and why it was so satisfying. But just to add a new thing to the mix, I just thought the action scenes were maybe the strongest in Adolin's as well.
So cool. She injects chapter 84 into my
chapter 84 is so good.
So for those who don't remember specific chapter numbers like psychopaths, that's when Tom tells everyone, none of you seem to understand. I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me.
The only reason I remember that chapter number is because when like I see people's like spoiled reactions, it's always like chapter 84, and then like it'll be a bunch of just like people freaking out, and then I'm just like, oh yeah, that's the Talon stuff. Yeah.
Do you guys wish you saw it? Did you want to see it?
I thought
no, I like intellectually, yes, I wanted to see it, but I honestly think like what we saw is just like the imagination of it is so much cooler. It would have honestly just been him being like, and then he grabbed a guy and he killed him, and then he killed another guy. I'm like, yeah, I've seen that 100 times, but I haven't seen like for Ash to be like, this time I'm going with him. Like that's just more powerful than anything we would have seen with him killing random fused.
And also the confusion of the people getting there, just being like, who killed like all the fuse, and like trying to be like, what could have possibly done this?
That is cool. Yeah.
Also, random thing that this related me that is just a consistent part of Adolin that I want to shout out. I just love like how much respect Kaladin gets at this point. And at one part, like when Adolin is thinking about how tough one of the groups of fused is, the way he describes it is like, even Kaladin has trouble with them. And I'm like, yeah, that's my boy. That's how tough they are.
Oh man, when Adolin had like the sword from his wedding.
Yeah,
that Kaladin gave him. I was like, oh my god,
he's so real for that.
I love it.
Bromance, when Shallan was like, yeah, he got like 37 swords, including one from Shallan, and he wore the one Kaladin got him. He's so real for that.
You know what? When speaking of that like scene, when Shallan was like, she was at my wedding, I put the book down and went straight to Oathbringer and reread that scene.
Oh, this is where you're not being
we talk about when she was at the wedding and I had read the book and then I went to the World Hopper Ball and she shows up to the World Hopper Ball and Witt's like, you're not supposed to be here, and I couldn't tell anybody. Everyone was just sitting here not having read the book, and I was just there experiencing this.
That's amazing.
And I made it so much worse because I had a wrong theory I was confident about, and I was like telling people, and Bookborn, I didn't know this at the time, was just sitting here being like, I have a poker face, I have a poker face, I have a poker face. Great poker face. I never suspected at any point. It could be because I wasn't observational, but I you were there as well? What's up? I was at it as well, and there's like a redheaded woman and gets
Yeah.
chased away by Wit. And so when I was at
so
the World
cool.
Hopper Ball, the first thing when I looked there is I looked and I saw the heralds, and I was like, they're gonna scratch out Shalosh. Like at some point, Shalosh is gonna, because the Shalosh herald wasn't blocked out, which I stand by. That would have been cool if like halfway through, like if in the middle of one of like the cool displays, everyone looks up and like Shalosh would cross out. So I was like, maybe that was like Shalosh showing up and Wit being like, now's not the time. Like, don't cross out your face. But obviously, what we got was much cooler. And yet, Bookborn, you did a very good job of not telling anyone about that.
We were all like at the dance floor watching the performance at this point, and the food was like, there was no line for the food, and I hadn't gotten any food yet. And then so like Wit starts like yelling like at somebody off, and he just like runs up. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna go grab some food real quick. So I went to the back just by myself, and I saw Wit. Like I walked like literally right past where like Wit is like leaning off on a table, like yelling at this like short red-haired lady. And I was just like, I don't understand what's going on. Like I didn't put any critical thinking into it. I was just like, I don't know what this means. And I just like went and got my food. And I was like, you know, they really committed to this, because he had a whole dialogue with her that other people couldn't hear because he took off his headset. Like at first he was like yelling, they could hear, but then he's sitting there just like yelling at her without, because I thought it was the actor playing Wit talking to his redheaded friend.
No,
I was like, oh, he's just taking a break.
You were just like, Jackson's yelling at some red-haired woman.
Yeah.
What about Adolin thing? What about Maya when she goes to get her friends? I did not see that coming, because I really thought she was going back to the honor sprint. And then when she showed up with all the other Deadeyes, I was also very into that.
Sick.
Jake, you ruined that for me. You said on the podcast, you said that all the Shard Blades would come back. And as soon as she left, I'm like, oh, the Jake thing's happening.
Oh, I guess I just said it when we were reading it because like it foreshadows before.
Yeah.
Like they're like a bunch of Shards Blades. I'd forgotten I said that.
Yeah.
Well, you
Thanks, Jake.
ruined Davenor being the champion, and for me,
I also thought that was going to happen. Like when she went away, I was like, she's for sure going to get the Deadeye spread.
Yeah, I didn't predict it. I was also like in a haze. So
I'd forgotten
you
about
can't say
past prediction.
anything.
Man, I have major Dragonsteel FOMO. This is
if I'd read it all, if there hadn't been foreshadows,
Jake was actually at the Friday 5 p.m. World Hopper Ball.
By himself.
Yeah, I accidentally signed up for the wrong one.
The wrong ticket.
I was there.
Kyle and me and all of our other friends were at the Friday night at 9:30 p.m.
I still had fun.
You looked like you had a great time.
Yeah, Kyle was like, "Oh man, yeah, sorry you missed it," but no, I mean, it would have been cooler, obviously, meeting with everyone, but it was really fun. They sent me in and they were like, "Yeah, let us know like if it sucks or not," basically, and I was like, "That feels like that's pretty cool. That's about as good as I could have expected it to be." So do we want to now? Is there more Adolin stuff people want to talk about?
I just wanted to say, like at the very, very end, he has this like coterie of dead-eyed spren holders. Like, do we have any ideas about like what do we think about that?
Well, they're now the powerful people, right? Because
what?
They're the new Radiant in a sense, right? Because Stormlight's gone.
I guess they're the only ones left. I guess I didn't really I didn't put those two pieces of information together.
Mitch. Sorry, Mitch. Whoever's kidnapping Mitch, that's cruel. Mitch, we'll tell us your location and we'll call the police.
There's somebody in Jimmy's Discord that skipped book 4.
You skipped 6 Wheel of Time novels, Kyle.
No. This is crazier. You know it's crazier.
Wait, really? And they just jumped into Wind and Truth.
Yeah, they started Rhythm of War. Sorry, they started Rhythm of War at one point, and they just like didn't like it, so they just stopped reading it like early on, and then they just got sucked into the Wind and Truth hype, so they just started reading Wind and Truth. I was like, wow.
Yeah, you would never do anything comparable.
Next, Kyle, were you saying you want to do Kaladin and Szeth next? Is that what you said? Or did I
think Jake might have said that.
I don't remember anyone saying that. I think maybe Bookborn just wants to do Kaladin and Szeth
that's
next.
Not what I said. Kyle was like, what about Kaladin and Szeth? That's not the one we have to do next. I just literally thought Kyle said that.
Do you want me to mention my one fake complaint for the Adolin plotline and one real, very mild one?
Sure.
So the fake complaint, and this was on the first chapter of the Siege, is that they use burning oil for siege defense. Just use boiling water. Like, boiling oil is not a thing for siege defense. Historically, every fantasy author has decided it is. it's just way more difficult to set up, and you can just throw boiling water on people. And like, it doesn't have to be drinking water because it doesn't matter if it's sanitary. Just like, anyway, whatever. Not a thing. And someone should have corrected him for that. And
the thing is though, like, you're totally right. I'm sure historically, but like, as someone who cooks a lot, burning water doesn't injure you as much as burning oil because the oil sticks to your skin.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like, it is worse to have the oil on you. Absolutely. Like, yes.
I would know
that being
I have
said,
a scar from burning oil because I'm just like so unsafe in the kitchen constantly.
Do you want to know how I got these scars?
from cooking with olive oil on too high heat.
It's also
From
fused,
deep
dude.
frying. From
It's
America.
fused. You got to like use the strong stuff, you know, just set them on fire.
Anyway, that's a true complaint.
But yes, burning oil wins by rule of cool.
Yeah, exactly. I
it's
agree,
just
Mitch.
too hard to set up, and you accidentally. And also, I'll have you know, like, one of the problems where it's like, shit, we can't drop the burning oil on people because then we'll accidentally burn things down. And Adolin was like, this is actually a really strategic problem. If they had boiling water, they could have just kept dropping boiling water on people. Whatever, it's not important. The other that I think is true, but I ended up not caring because how cool it is considering this takes place literally 2 days after Rhythm of War. The amount Adolin's like the amount of inner conflict he has about Dalinar is borderline retconned.
Yeah, I super agree. After
This is
reading
actually
Rhythm of War,
criticism.
yeah, like Rhythm of War and beginning Wind and Truth, Adolin's worries about Dalinar are just not the same. They're just absolutely. He just decided he needed that arc in the 5th book,
which correct. It's very cool.
Yeah, it worked well for me, but it's reading them back to back. It is extremely jarring.
Anyway,
yeah, and I think that same thing happens with Kaladin because the ending of Rhythm of War for him was incredibly dark at the top of Irithyru, and then it just feels like he's a little too okay.
It does end with him making a pretty like. But yeah, kind of.
I think it's probably true when you read it back to back. I think for me, it's because Sanderson had so emphatically said in so many lives, like, Kaladin has turned a corner. So I think I was really expecting it because people were, I think, upset by Kaladin's arc in Rhythm of War because it was dark again. And he was like, don't worry, guys, Kaladin has turned a corner. So I wonder if that's why he sped it up in Wind and Truth, because he knew people were like done with.
I do think also just that, like, when you have like a really, like, he had a big realization about himself, like it's a huge deal. I do think that would then make him feel like better. That doesn't mean he's never going to be depressed again, but just like have a little bit of an equilibrium. So
yeah, no, I understand.
As in, I think Renarin doesn't have a big a problem about Dalinar's past because Renarin had a very different relationship with Dalinar. Like, I think Adolin's issue is that he idolized Dalinar, and Renarin always had a very difficult relationship with Dalinar. So I think finding out those things, lots of spoilers, Anita.
All the spoilers.
So I think that's why. That's my personal reading of it. I think Renarin, you know, already saw a lot of his father's flaws in a way Adolin hadn't thought of or accepted.
So now that we talked about the best plotline for the book, I think we can talk about the Venli plotline and get it out of the way, and then slowly work our way to the medium best plotline. I think that definitely is a logical.
At a certain point, we're going to start disagreeing. I think we all agree on the best and the worst.
Yeah, and that'll be fun when we disagree.
Yeah.
So Venli's still kind of boring because she constantly thinks about how much she's changed and the character growth she's went through. But I still have no idea really what actually inspired her to realize that she shouldn't be a crap person anymore. She just kind of did decide to stop being a crap person and then think about it way too much. But she did do cool things, and the resolution for the singers getting the Shattered Plains was good.
You know, Bookborn's going to get this, I hope. I just started rewatching Schitt's Creek, and I'm aware that Venli is essentially Alexis, who is the world's worst person, but then it's just like, I've come so far. I learned how to ride a bike. Oh my God, guys. Like, I learned how to ride a bike. Like, I'm just so good now. And it's like everybody else on Earth is like, okay. Like, that's Venli all the time.
Yeah, except Alexis is better than Venli, so I don't want to hear anything.
I mean,
about
it's a comedy show. It's much different context. Yeah, I mean that plotline is fine. I think, like, it's just, I just wish we experienced it through not Venli. Leshwy's great in this book.
Venli was way better in this book though than Rhythm of War. Like, the flashbacks,
yes, I agree.
Venli flashbacks were just like so boring for me. I felt like we learned nothing new. We really gained nothing from them personally, and I didn't feel that way about Venli this time, so I was fine with it. I thought
There's also not that much of her. I bet there's
Yeah.
like 60 pages of her max.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very small plot line.
Yeah.
Hence why
Yeah.
the book's ruled. So like maybe I just find this not satisfying. Of like, yeah, I was bad, and I'm gonna constantly think of how much I've come further as a journey. If the journey is just like a spren magicked me into
Like,
not
I
being
get-
a crap person anymore, I don't know.
Venli
Yeah,
as a
okay.
character is boring, but like her story was needed. I loved hearing
Yeah,
the
yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
I loved hearing Leshwi or whatever. Like I love her as a character. So I enjoyed being in Venli's perspectives
true.
for those
I agree.
reasons, not because of Venli though.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Chasm Fiend stuff was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also true.
I agree with that. I loved being where she was, just not necessarily in her head. This is like the one thing that I can never kind of get over. I feel like Eshonai was such a loss. I feel like even though it was such
Yeah.
a great like emotional beat, like I feel like that character.
Well,
could have
Christian,
done
I
so
Much
think-
much.
better character.
And I might have been wrong, but I thought at a moment Brandon had said something like, "Oh, not all the flashback characters have to be alive." So I thought we were going to get Eshonai's flashbacks,
Oh, right.
and then instead we get Venli. And I still think like Eshonai could have died, but then we got her flashbacks, and it would have been
Right.
better. Because
Yeah.
Eshonai is like definitely the better character.
Yeah. She was.
I
so
don't
amazing.
think. I think he's saying that to not have accidentally spoiled. I think he got really excited like 9 years ago, and he's like, "Here's the flashback characters for all 10 people." And then somebody was like, "You know that like spoils that they're alive." And he's like, "But they could totally be."
Yeah, that's probably
Right.
true.
I just
You're
think we're gonna reach book 10, and all of the flashback people will have been alive for their flashback book. That's my theory. But
You know what, Kyle? I think you're 100% right, but I'm just saying that it was disappointing
Yeah,
for me
I
that it
know,
wasn't
yeah.
Eshonai.
Yeah, I really miss her. I really
Yeah.
do.
that end bit in Rhythm of War was great
Yes.
with the Stormfather.
So do we want to let Derek Liu moderate this conversation and talk about since it's related to the Venli plot? Talk
I
about
have
Sigil?
one really quick Bookborn lore spill related to the Venli thing. So she
Mhm.
read the whole book in like 2 days. Couldn't
No,
talk
no.
to anybody about it.
It was 3.5 days, and I had already read the preview chapters because people
Okay.
are saying I didn't read it. They don't believe me that I read
Okay.
the novel.
All right, I
So,
won't
like,
exaggerate then. But she read it very fast, so she couldn't talk about it with anybody. And so we're at this like Brandon spoiler Q&A, and he's just like dropping stuff cheekily that's like in Wind and Truth, but nobody knows yet because they're not in Wind and Truth. And she's
I'm
just sitting there,
vibrating.
just getting upset, like just clearly. And then at one point, somebody's like asks a question, and it's like about Chasm Fiends. He's like, "Yeah, well, you might get some stuff." And she just turns to me, she's like, "Can I spoil you on something really minor?" And I was like, "Sure." She's like, "You get that in Wind and Truth." And I was like, "Okay, great." Like,
Did I say that to you like 4 times during
Oh.
that Q&A though?
Oh,
Yeah,
Kyle?
yeah.
Christian froze
Spoiler
and
thing?
replaced himself with a different version of himself.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
The thing
He
happened.
really is a
The thing
Kremling. That was the most Kremling-like thing to do.
Can you switch your name to Cognitive Shadow?
You
of
guys saw
Christian or something?
nothing.
You're
I think
now
it's too long.
you died and got immediately put back. You're a cognitive
Okay.
shadow of Christian now on this.
Okay.
By the way, yes, we can agree on this. And rereading Rhythm of War made me realize that is absolutely the end game romance. They're both immortal now too. Like it's straight up. That's who the relationship is. Someone get Syl on this.
Kaladin and Syl is actually cursed in so many ways.
Yeah.
I hate it. So
I hate it
anything
a
would
lot.
almost be better. Like anything, but that is a big-
Kaladin realizing he loves rocks is a more interesting idea to me. Like,
But also Kaladin, and this is actually the correct.
I think this is much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sigil.
Kaladin and Shana. Well,
That's
the
all
thing
right,
is,
all
he's
right.
going to be doing therapy with Shallan's mom, right?
That's a breach of responsibility. That's a breach of
contract.
He's
Yeah,
just like
that's-
he's like
Breach of contract.
he loses Shallan, so he's like, "No worries, I'll become your stepdad." Like,
And he, well, what's the deal with her brother? Because there was a thing that said, and is Halaran her half brother? There was some brother.
yeah, I think that was revealed in the book that
Right.
Halaran's her half brother. But it was not. It was mentioned in like half a line, and everybody just moved on. It was not.
right.
We
So
didn't
Wait,
get more
I
information.
missed this.
That'll
Half
be-
a brother, which way? Like half a
You
brother.
don't know.
male?
It's not her brother is not Channa's kid, like Halaran.
Anyway,
You know
this
what's
he
funny?
would get
Lauren,
fired.
like-
He would lose his certificate. He would like the board would be like, you can't do
Or
that.
maybe-
There's gonna be a
maybe
Maybe it's
lawsuit.
the back.
Over.
Actually, I might have to reread it, or maybe somebody in the comments remember. I might have it backwards. Christian, do you remember? It might be that he's not like he's only Channa's son, and not.
That does make. I
Oh.
feel like
No,
his
I
co-
think
all the
you had it
conflict
right.
with Shallan's
I-
dad in Words of Radiance flashbacks make more
Because
sense.
all the
Yeah,
others have like weird afflictions, and I think that's because of
Yeah, that's what I think
Channa.
too. So I think it's
Yeah.
not Channa's kid. Is
Yeah.
Halaran.
The big thing that I had missed in my haze of reading, that Pete told me, and then Kyle also missed, and I had to tell Kyle. So Shallan's pregnant.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
How do you
missed
feel
that.
about
It's
that?
so
I
obvious when I read it and like
So
reread it. I'm like,
obvious.
how did I miss it? Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't
Pete
know
was
how
like,
you
go
guys
read
did
this page. And I read it and I was like, how did I miss this? Like, it's so obvious.
Yeah,
So-
she's like, not just for me, and then holds her belly.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, what could that
This
mean?
is supposed to be a live show where I brought people with credibility, and by saying you missed that, you're all kind of like really hurting
will
the
say-
credibility of this. So
I picked up
I
on something
read
you
it
didn't
so
pick up
fast,
on.
and there's so much stuff happening.
Yeah.
And like Stormlight just ended. So all I can think of is like Stormlight's gone, Stormlight's gone, Stormlight's gone. And I'm not, and it was 5 a.m., Jake. I don't know what you want from me.
It is like a good point when people are like, Sanderson's so obvious, and it's like, well, some of us just need our hands held. we would have been complaining so much if she was like, not just for me, but not just for myself, and holds her belly. She's like, but my not born yet child. We would be like, come on, Sanderson, let's put 2 and 2 together.
It gives us all more credibility because people who can't admit that they're wrong or don't know something usually have the least credibility because they will never tell you like
That's
they didn't
true.
catch something. So
okay, I apologize for my slander. I retract it. I was wrong.
Love Adolin saying I thought she was hungry.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Jimmy called. Sorry, just to add, it gives Jimmy some credit. I got to be somewhat nice to him. Because of that shower scene, he was like, "That's very unlike Sanderson. She's probably pregnant." So yeah.
I thought Sanderson was just sick of people telling him that he's sexless. So he's like, look, here's a married couple showering. Some people there was a couple people in my comments who were really mad at that scene. Like, Sanderson has turned pornographic. And I was like, guys, that is like, I'm very picky about what my kids read. I'd let like a 12 or 13-year-old read that scene. Like, I mean, guys, it's like,
yeah, read for
he definitely is more sexual in his, like, he talks about sex both directly and indirectly more in this book, but it's only shocking because he doesn't do it at all for like most of his books. Like, I'm just like, he said the word sex.
Well,
I was like scandalized.
The Warbreaker scene, I still think the Warbreaker scene is technically more explicit. Like the Warbreaker scene,
I think it's just more booby. Like I think it's
explicit
that there are boobs.
I'm talking about
when
Siri
she
just like
pretends
faking it on the
she's
bed.
having sex with people outside.
I know, like I just don't agree. That's more. Well, okay, maybe it is.
That's more explicit.
Like more explicit. I don't think that scene is explicit. I'm saying comparing.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
Shower scene. That is
the point. Is Sanderson is not that spicy. That's the point.
But also, if Warbreaker was written on his honeymoon, congratulations on Sanderson. His marriage is going well. That's what we can conclude. So that's good, and good for you, Sanderson. So Sigil was also under siege and did commander things, which was quite cool, and I really liked the way they won this, where they sold it to the listeners. I was like, oh, they're gonna sell this to listeners. That's really smart. Legal technicalities, Uno reverse card, stupid.
I didn't get it at all. Like I didn't know what their plan was at all, because I was reading this part at like 4 a.m, and I was like,
I was reading it late too, Kyle.
But they didn't come out and tell you. Like they were like, we have a plan. And Six was like, I'm perfect for this plan. And then you go do other stuff for 50 pages.
Kyle, some people don't need to have their hand held as a reader.
That's so true.
Figure out the plan.
That is so true. I love Sixel stuff. I thought it was great.
Yeah. You know what? I thought... Go, Bookborn.
Oh, no, that was it.
Oh. I love how the reaction, like, one of the fused goes like, whatever, we'll just kill you anyways. And then, like, L steps in and he understands the contract law going on, and he's like, hold up, we're not doing any of that. Like, hold the fort.
I want to look more into L, because
I wish we had gotten more L in this book. Yeah,
because he like knew the heralds and all of that, but I feel like that's
he's also like, there's the part in the back where like that's what you're talking about, where he was like one of the old listeners or whatever. Yeah, that's super cool.
Also, we can talk about Moash not doing that much, but being a Stormlight Inquisitor now, which was cool.
Well, that was actually my big complaint. I told Kyle, like, right after I finished, I said, there are 2...
Who's the other one, by the way?
Minor characters. I told you. Minor characters. Yes, I did.
You can say now.
Yeah,
I want to finish my Moash thought first, Kyle.
Okay.
I just said there was two perspectives that I needed more from, and Moash was one of them. I think he needed just one more interlude. Like, it didn't have to be a lot. I just feel like he was such a primary antagonist. Like, what he did in Oathbringer, what he did in Rhythm of War, the fact that we got so little of him just felt unfinished. That was the only thing of the book that felt really unfinished to me. Like, I just needed one more perspective from Moash, even if it was like 4 pages at the end of the novel.
I agree.
So what you're saying is the book actually had to be longer and it was too short.
Yeah, but there was 50 pages we could cut. So you could take like 50 of those pages and move 10 of them to Moash.
I really think we needed an Azure appearance in this book. And it's not even because of like Cosmere. It's just because if this is the narrative stopgap for the first half, this is a character who was set up with a mystery in the third book, and not like a minor mystery. Like, she had a decent chunk of Oathbringer, and then she interacted with our main cast, and she was like, I'm going to go off and do this stuff, and I'm connected to this other character. And then we didn't see her again for the rest of that arc. And then now there's a 10.
She's going to the Hornery Peaks, the perpendicular.
Yeah, we might see her. I do think we might see her in Horneater, but I think that, like, in terms of just trying to like stopgap the first half and set up like where everybody's been and where they're, I think not seeing her at all was a mistake. Even like a 2-page interlude or something.
My other one was Rock, and I know we're getting a Rock novella.
Oh, you did tell me that. Okay, I'm sorry.
It really bothered me that like we haven't seen Rock since the end of Oathbringer, and that
beginning of Rhythm of War.
Well, he was in the beginning of Rhythm of War. Okay, but like I mean, he wasn't in Rhythm of War. So, like, I just feel that is a long time not to even get, like, a hint of him. And, like, I understand that we're getting a novella. Like, I get that. But I don't know. I really wanted something there.
Just the stew. We got the bootleg stew.
We did get the stew. I wanted him to be in it because I'm sick of people being like, I don't understand why you guys think Rock is alive. Like, the Horneaters say they're going to execute a guy, and then he goes a place and we haven't seen him yet, so therefore he's dead. This is all over Reddit. There's a bunch of people on Reddit who think he's clearly dead. And I'm like, why would we get a novella of a guy and the whole novella is he just goes to a place and they're like, hey, you did this thing, we're going to execute you. And he's like, I accept. And then he gets executed. That's a terrible novella.
Maybe
that would be bold. I'm going to say that would be bold.
Sanderson is inspired by Tolsky. He's writing his version of the death of Ivan Illich.
I don't mind it.
It's going to be called The Death of Rock, where he shows up. He's like, yep, I'm expected to get sentenced to death. And they're like, yep, that's what we're doing. And then he is.
I mean, the Horneater Peaks are going to be huge. Just from a lore perspective, rereading the Way of Kings, and just how much Rock seems to know about everything. Pretty stunning. And I will say, while we're on the topic of like side characters, even though there were more interludes than ever, they felt... And they were great, but they were so plot related. I kind of missed those really out there. Like, what is this thing? Maybe I'm getting that from you. Yeah, because I didn't watch your review. But I agree with you by saying that, yeah, we could have had a few more wacky. Like, I just want, in a sense, like we got so many answers, and I'm somewhat hesitant. I'm not confident enough to stick with this opinion, but I somehow feel like we haven't got enough left to wonder about a little bit.
There's tons to wonder about, but okay.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, there's so many things.
It's my initial.
Tell me about the sleepless, Christian. Tell me all we know about the sleepless.
We can do more about that.
I guess you probably feel it as the theory guy who spends his time searching up chapter names verbatim on the Coppermind, which I understand.
And found some things, Jake.
You did.
Yeah, you did.
I want to say for this that proof that Moash is a total bitch is that he's still, despite being like having an honor blade and being some kind of inquisitor and being nearly unkillable, every time he's fighting someone, he uses the stupid anti-investiture Fabrial, and it's just like, won't, like, instead of actually just fighting them, he won't even fight an invested person, despite being a great fighter who's an inquisitor. Anyway, screw that guy.
I forgot Leighton died while we were talking about this, and Leighton. I actually did feel more sad that he died than Dalinar, which is if you told me before I read this book, yo, Leighton's going to die and you're going to be in the moment more sad than the moment Dalinar dies, I would have called you crazy. But I thought that was a really good
Dalinar's death didn't feel sad because he succeeded. Like, anyway, to me at least.
Leighton's was very visceral and
and
tragic.
I knew it was going to happen because we haven't gotten any information about him. And again, Sanderson doing Sandersonisms. He just sat down and Leighton's like, yeah, you know, like life's just like really difficult, but you just get up and you stand up and you do it, and then one day you're happy and we can do it, man. We can. And then he dies. Like, okay.
See, he had more potential. Still stuff he had to do. Okay, quick thing also for Sigil. The Stormwall side character.
Oh,
I really want him to not be a side character in the second arc because he's cool.
Yeah, I agree. He's cool.
Okay, so this is funny. I really disagree, but this is funny. So I'm putting it up. Yeah, that's a great use of that meme. Even though I think Wind and Truth is really good, I will grant you that you did a funny thing. Okay, so there.
I feel like Moash feels cartoony. I think sorry, this is Leon's thing. I feel like it was really interesting seeing how manipulated he got in this book. Like, I know this sounds crazy, but I almost I'm not a Moash defender. But like when you see Taravangian just like completely manipulate him again, like he's again now in the depths of pain because Taravangian's like, I'm not taking away your pain anymore. Now he's all like suffering. Taravangian offers him a different option, like you were right all the time. And so then Moash clutches at that. You're just like, he's such a broken person. Like, I understand we don't like Moash. Like, I get it. But like, I think he's so interesting because it's like, when are you ever going to reckon with the stuff you've done? You just literally keep pushing it off. And that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I agree.
That's why we wanted more of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we feel? Like all of us read Sunlit Man before this book, right?
Yeah.
How do we feel about how that influenced the book? Because I understand the people who say that they're like, oh, I wish I hadn't known that like Sigil was going to live or whatever. But I liked the question of like, I'm like, clearly something's going to happen, but what is going to happen? And I thought that built tension for me personally.
Yeah, I said I loved it because it was like, we've been placing so many theories on death rattles, and now we get a death rattle that we know is objectively untrue. At least at this time.
That's a good point. I didn't consider that.
So when I read it, I was like, oh, the death rattles. I mean, I know we knew the future was a little iffy, but the death rattles have felt very truthful. And so I loved in that moment, like I immediately was like, oh my gosh, that death rattle's untrue. So what does that mean for every other thing we've said? So like for me, it just moves the question. It moves the question to somewhere else. So again, more proof that it does not matter what order you read these books in. It just moves where you find a revelation.
As you all know, I currently have the stance that you have to read the Cosmere in exactly the right, precise order.
I don't even like that you're joking about this.
You're right. I'm sorry. Totally
this.
Nonsense.
Somebody is going to pop in and only hear that and be like, got it, and then leave.
You're right. I'm sorry.
I'm just like hyper focused on that death rattle now that you said that book.
That's
I'm
a
like,
great
yeah, what
point.
It was about like,
that is a really awesome.
That Moash was going to get him. Like Moash.
Well, it's specifically, I die by the hands of a friend. I've read it like several times. Like I die by the hands of my friend. A friend. My spren is killed. Blah 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 blah. And it's very clearly pointing to Moash. And so my thoughts are like, Moash could become a big villain and do this later. Like, because Moash has another spren, like that could still be a true death rattle. It just wasn't true in the moment, or it could be completely non-true and never going to come true. Like,
Sigil has another.
Well, Sigil has another spren, but also Sigil lost that spren too now. So do you think
I got my tabs in here, so I bet I could find it.
That's really cool. I hope just for the sake of death rattles being honestly both are quite satisfying, but I'd like there to be an interesting reason why it's not true, because it feels like that sticks out like a sore thumb.
I think it's a lot. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb because it's like when Jasna got to see the future that Renarin was seeing, and then right? she chose to change it. I think the idea is that Sigil got to hear his future and in that moment make a decision to change it.
That makes sense. That would also.
I totally agree with that.
This makes so much sense.
I like that.
Think of that makes so much sense. Why Taravangian was like literally killing people to try and get death rattles. Like if you can only change something if you get a death rattle about yourself, because then it's like you can see the future and it's like Atium v Atium.
Where do you think approximately that happened in the book? Like would we say
like day 8, day 9?
It wasn't day 9. I think it was day 7 or 8.
Yeah, because it was before the other plan. Yeah.
Or wait. When he renounces, I was thinking of Leighton's death. It's probably day 8.
Well, no, because it's Leighton's death is when the death rattle.
Wait.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Wait, Leighton just died. So does the death rattle happen?
It's
In
when
that
Sigil's
chapter?
holding him. Yeah.
Okay.
Man,
So
that's
that would
super
mean
cool
you
that
could
if you
only
hear
change
it,
death
you
rattle.
can change
Yeah.
it. Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
cool if that's true.
Yeah.
It makes sense though, right?
Okay,
Like it's
okay.
totally internally consistent
I
with how
found it.
Leighton would.
But thank you to my tabs. Look at that. Okay. I die, Leighton shouted, spasming. The scholar with a spear. I die by the hands of a friend. My friend screams in death, and I know that I have failed to lead. I am no captain. I am nothing. Fire strikes me, and my eyes burn.
That seems very unlikely to happen later. Like
Yeah, I don't think that's
seem
gonna
to
happen
happen
later.
later,
I think he
I don't
changed
think so
it.
either.
What's
Because
curious
even
to
like the
me,
fact that he's a captain, like I don't feel like he'd go back to Rashar and also be a captain
Sunlit
again.
Man,
Like, it would
is
be-
not a captain.
yeah.
He's Mad Max. Like Mad Max
I
is a
agree.
captain.
I agree.
the only thing that stands out to me is that like that's so contextually aware as a death rattle. That's where I think, is that a bit suspicious that it's like literally about the person you're next to that you're death rattling about? Because they tend to be kind of random.
But I mean, sometimes if
okay.
it was
No,
random,
I'm gonna bounce off this, Christian. I'm gonna be your Jimmy. What if that's just like Taravangian just like planting that in there because it's
That's
like
what
a
I
joke.
mean. That's
Like
what-
No, but I
trying
mean,
to
like,
maybe misdirect.
Random things are going to be unrandom sometimes, right?
Yeah.
That's a pure
Yeah.
random.
okay.
It's like, you know how on iPods, they used to have an actual random sort, but then they had to fix it to make it more random because it didn't feel random. Because it was like
you get the same song like 3 times in a row sometimes because that's what happens sometimes.
That's
Random, you
what
get weird
random
results.
is. So really,
Yeah.
when you press shuffle now, it's a very careful algorithm because random wasn't random enough.
Yeah,
Mm.
people
I don't know if you
complain.
guys know that fact. That's
I
all
like
I
that.
did know that
It's
fact.
really
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
That makes me think there's like a random playlist of death rattles at any given moment, and they're just like,
Yes,
this one,
exactly.
do it.
Well, apparently they're not doing it, and that's that. And it like, if people start hearing
Interesting.
more death rattles about themselves, I'm raising the alarm. But right now, I'm totally cool with like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. If there's enough death rattles, someone's going to get one vaguely about themselves that they hear, and that and it totally makes sense that if you get one about yourself, you can change it. Like that's
Also,
completely internally
Death
consistent
rattles
with how
have been
Secret
about
Future
like
works.
big events, like all of like. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure like we haven't seen everybody die, but even the ones that Taravangian was collecting, like it's not about like the farmer that just hangs out and his wife is gonna die. Like it's always about like bigger type things. And so I feel like maybe because Sigil's now like leading the defense of the Shattered Plains, that he's now like more significant enough
not
to
only even
get
that, we know he's getting the Dawn Shard. So I wonder if possible if
getting,
it's
he got
for
it.
the future, and that he couldn't get the Dawn Shard from Hoid. That's like a very significant change as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely like a method. Well, there's like something to be gained by studying the death rattles because every one of Cal's ideals is mentioned.
Yeah.
In the death
Yep.
rattles too. So it's just like, what is what's the prerequisite to
What
be?
if- What if you heard
in
a
a death
death rattle like? I wonder if it could happen, but where you hear a death rattle about something that's about yourself that's good, because like Kaladin spreading the ideals is good, and then you start to get self-doubt and look for it anywhere, and it causes you to act different and have that not come about. That seems like that's theoretically possible as well, because which would be, don't do that, please. That'd be
Also,
kind of
because
cool,
this
but
is-
it sucks.
I consider this part of the Sigil storyline. Hoid just showing like everything to do with Hoid showing up and giving him the Dawn Shard is really, really funny. Like he just shows up and everybody's like, what is going on? And he's like Dalinar, and then he's just Hoid again from it. And he's like, take the Dawn Shard. And then he's like, he's gonna find me, and then he just explodes.
Yeah.
Incredible scene.
Yeah.
I love how it reminds me of like the coworker you have who's normally like really chill when like shit hits the fan. And they start like, they're just like suddenly like go, and they're just like telling people to do stuff. It's like, Hoid suddenly being in panic mode was hilarious. I agree.
Yeah.
And also, while we're talking about Hoid accidentally running into Risen and being like, holy crap, you have a Dawn Shard. That was a great interlude as well.
Oh, true. Yeah. I forgot about that.
Oh, that was what I was mixing up. Like he ran in with Risen and he looked like Dalinar, and that's what confused everybody. But then later on, he appears as Hoid to Sigil.
Yeah. And then Taravangian is just like vaporization go burr. And then I don't understand how the timelines work with Era 2. It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to me either.
We're just gonna move
I
on.
think this is going to be a retcon. I don't think there's a way for it to not be a retcon, based on the information we have right now.
Could we explain to the people why I think it doesn't make
Okay,
sense? Or is it
so
not?
no.
So
Do you want
Hoid
to-
is in. I can. Hoid is like in Mistborn Era 2. Like he shows up and talks to people, but then a lot of the conversations, with at the end of this book seem to imply that he's just appeared on Scadrial after the end of the Lost Metal. And it seems like he hasn't had a way, like before, like we would just assume that he had a way to travel between the worlds like pretty quickly. But now we can see that's clearly not the case, because the only way he had to get to Scadrial was to get vaporized and like regrow from a single cell. Well, that was before he was Retribution. Oh, Christian froze again. That was, I think he can, because
yeah, that was because Honor broke
well, he
the
lost.
contract.
He lost.
Honor.
He won the Contest of Champions as well, and Honor
Yeah.
broke the contract, and he's Retribution now, which is why he also put the entire. Oh, I have a segue here, which is why they put the entire place into internal darkness, including Thylon City, who got pranked, and that's why you don't make a deal with Taravangian, which is what Jasna should have pointed out when he was like, "See, you were willing to work with the new Odium." She should have just been like, "Yeah, but I didn't know the new Odium was you. If I knew that Odium was you, I obviously never would have agreed to do that."
This is a great segue into like that Jasna chapter actually really
Yes.
frustrated me, because I love where it ends. Like, I love the character arc for Jasna of like having to deal with that. I think is really excellent. However, I don't think she argues as smart as she is in that chapter. Like, and I hate reading a chapter where someone is not arguing well. It reminds me, well, this is going to be a random book that just really catches strays, but I hated The Circle by Dave Eggers more than like any book I've ever read in my life. And there is a scene in that book just like this, where the main character is arguing with someone and all their arguments are so dumb. And it's like this, I can't even watch this scene. And so I felt like, yeah, Jasna could have said like several things, and it didn't convince me. So that chapter really frustrated me.
By the way,
I love the end of it so fine.
The Contest of Champions contract is still a thing, but the original contract with Honor about not being able to intervene directly is no longer mute.
Yeah.
I don't think Jasna got nerfed.
So
I think Sanderson couldn't write the scene. Like, I don't think he was physically capable of writing it.
I'm going to disagree with you, while also somewhat agreeing that I don't think the scene was as effective as I actually think the problem with the scene was not Jasna. The problem with the scene was Fen more than anything, because I think Jasna was set up perfectly as to why she didn't argue. Because I agree she wasn't arguing to her best, but I think she acknowledges that both before and after. She's like, during, I guess, she's getting out argued, and in the moment she's like, this was his plan. He had me stressing out all night, thinking of counter arguments, and he's going to attack me as a person. So she's acknowledging in the moment that she's overworked and tired and wasn't prepared for this. And I think there's also an element of panic. Like, I think, like when you're arguing something from a place of panic, you're not at your best. And then afterwards, when she's reflecting, she is reflecting that like she wasn't at her best in that moment, and that there was a conflict that she hadn't anticipated.
I just don't buy that Jasna not at her best isn't significantly smarter than me. And I immediately was like, this is the argument you should make. Now, I'm pretty good at arguing.
She stayed up really late. She's very stressed out.
I was up late. I was sleep deprived.
You were not arguing against. You were not arguing against a god. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that there's no way to criticize the scene. But Fen is frustrating because like I don't believe like so. Okay, if we believe that like Jasna's whole thing is that there's a conflict in her worldview that she has never fully focused on, which I think is like a realistic thing. Like, we all have those, and we're confronted with them sometimes, and we take them as we do in the moment. Fen's whole thing in that scene is, I would never trust Odium, to then I guess I have no other choice but to trust Odium. And there's no reason for that. Fen just like in the moment is just like, yeah, I agree with him in that point. It's like, she felt like a video game character where it's like, she's like an NPC that doesn't actually have any thoughts. And it's just like, whatever the computer tells you is winning, then it just sways the NPC. And I'm like, this doesn't make, like, she wouldn't think this. That was my problem with the scene.
And it's like hard because we all like the end result. Like the end result is good, is the problem. So I think that's why I can forgive it. But yeah, that scene was very frustrating.
Yeah, Jasna's in the most interesting place as a character that she's ever been. And she's finally been like, oh, I thought about the trolley problem, and maybe pure utilitarianism isn't good. No one in Roshar came up with like the doctor organ transplant trolley problem, so she hadn't had to consider that before. But yeah, I think it's also not just, it might not being able to write Jasna smart enough, it also was not being able to write Taravangian smart enough to come up with an argument that I can't come up with an argument against. Because in my head when I'm reading it, I'm like arguing with Taravangian because like I don't think Fen should give up Silent City. And I'm like, nah, bro, like that's just not that convincing because of like these reasons.
Yeah.
I think it was like it wasn't enough
and there's
for
a
me,
need
like
to
you
lose.
said, Kyle, because like Fen was so against Odium, and I know how I feel as a person. Like if I'm so against somebody and I'm so not trusting someone, it would take so much more than what was said.
Yeah,
to
also just like
convince
in the moment, like imagine there's someone that like is your friend, and then there's someone you hate, like one of your least favorite people, and your least favorite person sits down and is like, this person's gonna agree with me by the end of this conversation that I'm not as bad, and then that ends up happening. You're not gonna be like, I guess I agree that I don't like you. Like it just didn't work. I don't get how he needed her to make those decisions, so she did. That's really what happened.
By the way, I am going to mention this. Like, obviously, we're going to wait for the Jasna flashbacks. If we got everything for Jasna before book 10, I mean, that's what happened with the Venli and Eshene flashbacks and the mostly Venli flashbacks. And one of the reasons they were mediocre is because we'd already gotten all the answers in like Words of Radiance. So yeah, if we got all of Jasna's backstory and learned all of the stuff about her, that would not be good because then there has to be a book about Jasna's past. But whatever.
Lauren has a good comment. Like, I get so annoyed when people are saying that, like, oh, Jasna is nerfed. I know you're not saying that, but Jasna is nerfed because now she's emotional and having a problem. Like, well, duh. Every character needs to have some sort of movement, and we haven't got to see Jasna actually have a lot of crisis. And so, like, that has made her so interesting. Jasna's my favorite character. I love her, and I'm like, yes, this is what she needed. She needed like a crisis going into the back half. So she gets to have a character growth moment.
So do you think because she's your favorite character, you were a bit harsher on her ability to debate in the moment?
I just know that Jasna's better.
You just idealize her so much? It's a Catelyn type of problem?
She's better than that. He wrote Jasna when I needed Jasna is what happened in that.
Yeah, look, I'm nowhere near as eloquent as you guys. I'm just sitting here nodding my head. But I do agree, like, I love where she's ended up. But just... I wasn't like you, Jake, arguing against Taravangian in the moment, but I just felt like a little like you're not delivering. I'm not buying this moment. But I understand where you're taking it, so just take me there and we'll see where she's left off.
Oh, Taravangian destroying Kharbranth. Oh, what an interlude. What an interlude. Holy crap.
And then also, by the way,
sad that he protected them though.
No.
I'm like
opposite.
I don't know how I feel about it.
No, I was literally the opposite. I was marginally conflicted about it because I was like, I feel like it might be going too far with Taravangian, and it's getting to a place where it's like it's harder to believe that he believes he himself is justified. But then when he didn't have the conviction to actually do it, and it was bullshit, it was so good. I actually I don't love the interlude without the later reveal.
Interesting. I
love the interlude without it because it's crazy, but
I came around to that in the end because people were saying like Taravangian, like that would be such a shift. I'm like, okay, that is true. But yeah, when I read that interlude, I freaked out. I couldn't.
I mean, I freaked out. But then, like, as I was reading through the book after freaking out, I was like, man, I'm a little conflicted with this, like the path that we're taking Taravangian. But then, like, him actually like saving them in that way. Oh, I love it so much.
It makes the whole retribution thing really interesting, like going forward, because we know this thing. So every interaction with retribution going forward, like I'm sure he's going to do a lot of terrible things and a lot of Cosmere books going forward. But we know that Taravangian is in there, and we know that he did this thing with Kharbranth. So there is an aspect of him that we know can take the reins, and he has that whole dueling nature. I think it's going to make it very interesting.
I do think it does make the conversation with Jasna more interesting in a lot of ways because he was convincing Fen about her hypocrisy and how she's always protected her family.
Yes.
And he's like, I don't do that. And then like at the end, he's like, but I did actually. I kind of like saved the whole city. So that part of it I did like.
This scene literally happened. Cultivation in the scene, like literally deliberately like didn't look at it. I know like she's a god and she's the other things, but we've seen from perspectives that they have to focus on individual things. Yeah. Like, because it was horrible. It's like, when something horrible is on TV and people like look away. She literally directly looked away. Anyway, Fen fucked around. Fen found out because now Thaylen City's in internal darkness. So shouldn't have trusted Taravangian. Who could have seen that coming?
Did they actually die and then he created copies, or like what was?
Yeah, they're they're like cognitive shadows, basically living in the Matrix, kind of.
Right.
I don't think that. I think it very
He told
deliberately
them
in the say he was like, this is them. They didn't die. Like it's almost like Sanderson paused the scene to look at us and be like, this is the real them. Like it was kind of weird.
Right.
But it's them like in the Matrix way, because like their body, like they're not physically anywhere. I think it's like their minds.
Yeah,
it's like literally their minds. The way like
Well,
was,
yeah,
like,
I mean, Carbranth, the physical place was destroyed. So like their body, unless he could teleport their bodies out, but I feel like that would be a different.
I just think it's
Yeah,
going to be
we
very
have
cool
seen
if we get
from-
to see it in a new Cosmere book.
yeah, we
like,
have
if we
seen
get
from.
that.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if we get that perspective from Retribution and he's just chilling in Carbranth during Elantris 3, that'd be cool.
We have seen like pretty distinctly that gods do have to be paying attention to something to see what happened. Like they are distinctly not omniscient. They are capable of seeing anywhere they want to, but if they are not focusing on something, they have no way of like
directly in this book because Honor pieces out for like 1,000 years, and then comes
He's just laying in a field for 1,000 years. He's just like, oh, the grass. He just takes LSD in a forest and is just like, it's been 1,000 years.
Yeah, so like we specifically see if you are not looking, you don't get to like retroactively have omniscience. Like you have to be present and experiencing it. So
yeah. Anyway, so since Tanavast came up, should we talk about the Tanavast stuff, Herald
this is
stuff?
the other thing I told Kyle.
Yeah.
This is actually a much
blame
bigger spoiler. Like I wasn't mad, and you did ask me if you could spoil it. But when so Jake came up with a question for our friend Ben, who's in the chat, about what spoiler question to ask. Jake, do you want to tell people what it is?
Yeah, sure. So we were all racking our brain, and I was like, I can just copy past me.
So wait. Let's read. You can submit to ask Sanderson a question during the Q&A, and it's random. So we all submitted, hoping we get picked, and then we crowdsource a good question. That's what's happening.
And the question it came up with was basically, what new POV would we get that would most change our perspective on the Stormlight Archive? And Ben got picked, asked that question, nailed it. And Brandon's answer was Tanavast. Bookborn had read the novel at this point. No one else had.
She's just sitting there vibrating, just like
fighting for her life here.
Just turns to me. She's like, "Can I spoil something minor for you?"
Oh.
And I was like, yeah, she's like, you get that in Wind and Truth. You get Tanavast POVs. And I was like, okay. And I figured we get like a top, like, like maybe like a really quick one. And then I'm like, day 9. I'm like, you spoiled something that was day 9.
Yeah,
and
you were far into the book.
So I messaged her. I'm like, you give me day 9 spoilers. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I thought that was way earlier in the book. I was sleeping.
No, I actually wasn't finished with the book because this is that funny picture Kyle has of me because I got the book early. So the book wasn't out yet. And we were at that spoiler Q&A and I'm like trying to read the last like 300 pages. So anyway, I spoiled that. I could only keep so much in, but they were great.
I loved those.
I kind of feel bad, Kyle, because I got that first. I came to that first on the airplane to Dragonsteel. I was on the airplane and I flipped the page over and it said 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, you told us you showed Zach that, yeah.
Freaked out, yeah. And so I covered everything. I said, Zach, just read this chapter title. And he was like, what's happening? And I was like, it's so good. So I love the Tanavast chapters.
That was one of my favorite moments, turning that page, because you've just been waiting for so long to see what happened.
It's also like really effective lore dumps. Like Sanderson is generally pretty good at lore dumps, and then sometimes I'm aware, because I'm a really big Cosmere fan, that I just tend to understand them better. But when people are like, yeah, I read one Cosmere book when it comes out, and then I read the next one, and I think the lore is too bad. I'm like, yeah, I could understand. There's just a bunch, but I thought the Tanavast stuff was really good at connecting so many dots of different pieces of lore, while also centering it on the fact that this god just was in love and wanted to not have to deal with he broke the contract. I don't know if it was contract or rule or whatever, where they weren't supposed to be on the same planet, but he just liked cultivation so much.
Yeah, and it's continually bringing the humanity to the shards and why they're so fallible, and also showing effectively, we've seen this in a lot of Cosmere books, but showing effectively how holding the shard changes the person, because we see Tanavast change quite a bit and how he's at odds with Honor and why that's an issue. So that also, I felt like it was shown most effectively in Tanavast's chapters though, which is why I think it was such a good lore dump.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Tanavast, we can now also pivot this and connect it to the Renarin plot with B-Mishram, because I thought that twist when Tanavast like betrayed them and they captured I really loved
That
the
was
B-Mishram
crazy.
plot.
Yeah.
I thought kind of like when B-Mishram first like on one of the first ones, I was like, I feel like the plot isn't going to be killing her, and I thought them freeing B-Mishram was so excellent, and the betrayal was so excellent. Yeah.
You said something in your review that like I agreed with, but I hadn't put it into words. Where you said that like it's very easy for people, or maybe you said it in one of your comments on your review.
Yeah, I said it in one of the comments because it would have been spoilery when I was arguing with someone. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. What you said was it's easy to make the noble choice when you're sure that there's not going to be consequences against you. But the most powerful thing about that scene is that Renarin and Rlain don't know what this is going to do. They're just like, this is the right thing to do, and it could like ruin their lives and everybody else's lives. But they're like, I don't care. This is the right thing, and how hard that is. And I'm like, that's very true.
And I also liked how they ended up connecting it with Rlain and Renarin's relationship, because I think like one of my favorite like arcs in the Stormlight Archive as a whole is like we start Way of Kings with, well, except for Ashonai, you know, these fused or whatever listener, they suck, you know, like it's their fault. And then like every book you're like, maybe I was wrong. And then it's like, oh, we were the void bringers. And then it's like, oh no, actually, like it's like everyone, it gets like worse and worse.
The fused aren't that bad. They're just crazy people that want to die.
Like,
you know,
there's not their fault. Like they're trapped just as much as anyone else is. And then to have it where like, you know, this fused and Radiant were like in a relationship, and they were like, look, we can be friends, we can end the war. And then they get betrayed. And then to have like Rlain and Renarin in the generation's future, like I loved the symbolism of that. I thought it was just like very sweet. I did hate how Shallan reacted to Renarin and Rlain. Again, it was like jokey in a scene that felt really poignant to me. So like, again, I just wish Sanderson hadn't put in like Shallan jumping for joy or whatever when they held hands. But like, I don't know. I really liked how that mirrored each other.
I also feel like it's out of character for Shallan a little. Like to be that over, like it's like he felt like he needed somebody to be jumping for joy, and Shallan was the only one there. I'm like, I feel like
Shallan does get a bit like very animated about stuff. It's
not the animation. It's animation in regards to like cheesiness. Like I don't know how to explain it.
I agree with what
not that
Lauren
big of a
said.
deal, but
it's the reader insert moment, you know.
Yeah.
So, but to take it back to B-Mishram, I just wanted to like highlight that the scene where they're in the spiritual realm and Shallan's visiting the old battlefields, and B-Mishram's like this weird creature, like
I love that. I really
afterlife.
want art of that.
That was like amazing. Yeah,
that's so cool. Like we got art of B-Mishram later, and I think that's also like a very cool, like depiction of her. But I really want a depiction of her like almost like slithering through the battlefield. Like that's so cool.
It was.
That's what I mean.
So
like
good.
we can get in the nitty gritty of everything, but like delivering on cool stuff is like 10 out of 10 for this book.
So one of the comments, someone who didn't like it was like, what was the point of the B-Mishram stuff? Because I think they were like looking for it to connect to one of the other big plots. But for me, like the end was the B-Mishram plot. So it's like, it's the other stuff's plot to connect to that. So I didn't need it to rely on something else.
Like, I know we've had a lot of complaints. Like we do have a lot of little complaints, but like also you can see our enthusiasm over all of these like really deliverable moments. So like, yeah, like Ram, that's perfect. Like it's not a perfect book. Like I could sit here and have like these, I don't like the therapist line. I don't like Shallan jumping up for joy, but like ultimately like everything made me feel so many feelings. There was just like so many cool moments that it just overshadowed maybe like the less technical aspects.
I agree.
And it's like, I think I said it has, if I went scene by scene through every Stormlight book and counted how many scenes each book has that I didn't like, this would have the most. But it also has the most moments that when someone brings up here, I can't contain my excitement. So like, it makes up for it. I think this might just be a thing people say when they don't like something. But
yeah, I think that a lot too, Lauren, when people are like, what was the point of that? It's like, well,
I'm
what's
like,
the
the
point of any?
story?
Like some plot lines have to end badly.
You guys are, straw manning the argument. Like there's for sure plot lines that just don't go anywhere in books.
That's true.
But like,
But sometimes there's stuff. It's like, what was the point of it?
So, okay, I can't spoiler A Song of Ice and Fire here, but there's like a very specific thing that happens in A Dance with Dragons that a lot of people are like, it couldn't have happened because that plot line would have been a waste.
No, I totally.
What a waste of a plot line means, just because it doesn't end the way you want. But I do agree, Kyle, that
I love
there
that
are
plot
plot
line.
lines that don't mean anything. I do too, Christian.
Yeah, that's a great plot
I
line.
love that we don't have that plot line anymore because that character is totally dead.
Exactly.
I was 98%
Exactly.
sure about what plotline it was, and now I am 100% sure.
Should we switch to Dalinar? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Just the thing, maybe why people feel this about the B-Mishram stuff is I kind of thought it was gonna, like, she was gonna be freed, and we're gonna have to deal with that in Wind and Truth. Whereas that was the climax, and it kind of feels like, oh, we're just getting started with that. I don't know why I had that expectation, but that's just that's how I
also think with the B-Mishram thing, it might have been hard for some people because like B-Mishram is the entire plot for like several of our main characters, and I know that the Cosmere scholars knew who B-Mishram was before this book. I know that the 17th Shard, like, Eric from the 17th Shard wakes up in the morning and thinks about B-Mishram for 2 hours. Like, I know that like some people really care, but most people reading this book for the first time would not have known who B-Mishram was when they started it. And then so we spent all this time learning about her, and then at the end it's like, and now she's released. So I can understand why that plot line didn't work for some people, but I loved it. So.
Also, there's just something I wanted to say. I wanted to say it when we originally did the chapter in Lost in Roshar, and I'm just going to say that I still can't say it because it's comparing it to another series, and it's a major spoiler for the other series. So whenever any of you get to the point in the other series, I'll try and remember to DM you and be like, this was the thing I want. I don't even know if I can say what series it is, man. Like,
have any of us read any of the books in the series?
Yeah.
Have I?
Yeah. I'm not going to answer any further
questions. Because I haven't read
anything. My God, Jake, why are you doing this to me? I don't care enough. I just want to know the answer.
Finish the series that you're in the middle of them. I'll tell Kyle what series it is.
It's gotta be Robin Hobb. It's gotta be Farseer.
He finished Realm of the Otherlings like yesterday, so
I know, but you wouldn't say that here because then it would have been the spoiler. Text
Kyle.
What
are you relating?
Lost in the weeds.
I'll tell you this, Pete. I can tell you, Pete. I will DM you right now.
My spirit has left my body. Like
Dungeon Crawler Carl. I just can't imagine you'd care that.
He hasn't read that
started yet.
Anyway, Dalinar and Navani. What do we think about that plot line?
The only thing I have to say about that, the only like jarring criticism I have is like there was so much hype. The spiritual realm is so crazy. You don't know what's going to happen. Even Hoid's scared of the spiritual realm.
I totally agree.
But it was just like, oh, you just grab their ribbon and then go to the next part, and then grab this and go to it was. I didn't feel that promise was fulfilled. Yeah, I guess I'll just throw that out there.
So I liked the spiritual realm plot. And I understand why it has to be like it leads up to this part of the end of the book, which is like I know why it had to be here, but I felt like I would have liked this plot line more if it was in like the third book. You know what I mean? Like I like some other book that's not the climax of this section, because I feel like Dalinar being my favorite character, I barely got any Dalinar in this book, and I know that I did technically get a lot of Dalinar. Like there are a lot of Dalinar POVs, but a lot of the Dalinar POVs is him being like, wait, that guy's that guy, and I'm looking for this herald, and it's just him playing the game of Clue over and over again. And like individually, I think all of those scenes are really good. Like I at no point was I bored reading them, but after reflecting on the book a little bit, I'm just like, oh, this was my last book with real Dalinar, and he spent most of the time watching spiritual TV, and I just wish there was more like substantial Dalinar scenes. But the end was really good with him, I thought.
Yeah, I think you've pointed out why I felt a bit like that as well. And then there's also every time Shana rocks up, it's like, and then the redhead, she has red hair. Is everyone paying attention? She has red hair. But yeah,
I think that's because you're hyper focused on your theory, to be fair. I think most people wouldn't notice that.
I guess so.
Okay,
but
Pete has sanity checked me. I can tell you the series, it reminded me of plotline is Malazan Book of the Fallen.
I figured that was the plot, or that was the series, and that's why I was like, it just doesn't matter to me. But anyway,
whatever. Anyway, I was kind of wary of the spiritual realm plot when I think I saw it like randomly on the blurb. I actually ended up enjoying it more than I expected to. I totally see the like it's hard to see the concrete benefit Dalinar was getting from it to resolve his main goal of the book, but there just kept being such cool stuff in them that like I just remember reading it, and every time I get to one of those, I'd be like, that was crazy. So I'm okay with it.
Do you guys know what was going on with Hoid in the spiritual realm? Like when he arrived from Ashton?
That was so funny.
Yeah, like but what's like actually happening?
So
I think it's just so go ahead.
You can go first, Kyle.
I don't have intelligent things to say. Go ahead.
Well,
I mean, I can explain it.
I think it was just literally what it was. Like, I think Hoid is such an invested person, and I think he has so much control over, and he's been around for so long that I think literally the spiritual realm can't accurately depict him. Like, I don't think it can fake him. That's like how I personally read it.
Right.
Like, he is such an invested individual.
I put it up that not like because he's also so aware of what's going on in the back end of everything that like the way the spiritual realm works, it like has to represent people as accurately as possible. But Wit in this situation would be aware that stuff is wrong and these people aren't the real purple and this is the spiritual realm. But then it's now not. But then Wit at the time, like in the actual scene, knew he wasn't in the spiritual realm. So it was like the, I guess, like algorithm on the back end trying to represent Wit kept getting confused on like, wait, should I be talking like I'm confused about the fact that I'm in the spiritual realm? Because Wit, that would be accurate to Wit because I am in the spiritual realm. Or should I be accurate to how Wit acted here? And it caused spiritual realm Wit to have an existential crisis.
And Hoid might also just have like a different relationship with the realms. Like you know what I mean? Like cognitive and spiritually. I think that was my one. I mean, it's not even a bummer because I think we're going to get it later. But like I have a note written when I started and I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to learn so much about the spiritual realm. We know nothing about it. And then like at the end of the book, I'm like, I still don't know a lot about the spiritual realm. Like I know what it's capable of now, but do like we really have a lot of info about how it interacts with like the cognitive and physical realm? Like not necessarily in my opinion. Yeah. So that was a surprise.
I think while we've been talking about this, one of my nailing down my problem with the Dalinar part is I think for a plot to feel very, very resonant to me, it's like, would this plot have the same success if another person did it? Like if you take the Kaladin and Szeth POV, Kaladin needs to be with Szeth for that to work. Like if instead of Kaladin, it was Renarin, it just wouldn't work the way that it works. I'm not saying that plotline couldn't find a way to be interesting, but the way that works is Kaladin and Szeth. Dalinar being the person in the spiritual realm, I don't think like that could have just been Navani and we could have learned all of the same information. Like Dalinar himself, the only thing you could argue that he did is be Dalinar by like he forces situations more. And then at the end, he reaches the thing that he needs. He needs to know that he needs to like let other people deal with the problem. That's like his big realization at the end. But all of the scenes that we spent, like 300 pages or whatever, I don't feel like he added anything to those scenes that another character couldn't have done. So it felt like a waste of Dalinar in those moments.
I mean, I will agree and disagree because like I agree that anyone else could have been in those moments, but I do think those moments where he had to confront his past, he basically realizes one of the other important realizations for him is that he didn't change as much as he thought. It was like,
yes, yeah, I agree.
That wasn't something like, as a reader, that was interesting because we all love Dalinar so much. And I think a lot of times we're like, well, but he's changed. You know, a man in the like a hypocrite is just a man in the process of changing. And then you like are confronted with a lot of these things and you're like, oh, well, maybe we were wrong. And like, so I thought that was a very cool realization for Dalinar's arc. Like that was a movement. But I do agree that like the spiritual realm stuff pretty much could have been done by Navani.
Yeah, like I think his journey in the book is good. I just like I don't know how to fully explain why it was disappointing to me that we didn't get like more Dalinar in a different way.
No, I get exactly what you're saying. I totally get exactly what you're saying. I'm saying that piece of the spiritual realm I think was interesting for his character, but I totally I agree. I get what you're saying.
I'd just like to say my Elokar video aged really well. And I would just like to stand by that.
What's that video?
I didn't know you had an Elokar video.
I have an Elokar video about why I like Elokar. And it's like the only character analysis specific video I've ever done.
I watched that video. Yeah. I'm the good at YouTube person. I have watched and I think commented on that video.
You did comment on it.
I remember that Elokar video.
Yeah.
Maybe we weren't friends yet, Jake. Maybe I didn't go back far enough.
That's entirely possible. It's really
Like,
funny.
I don't
'cause
remember
in
it
that-
at all, and I feel like I
always
would.
says I don't watch YouTube. And so I'd like to like make this statement right here that we are in this moment and I watched
Oh,
a
yeah.
Jake video
I
that no one else
You
has.
say you don't watch YouTube. I don't say you don't watch YouTube.
That's
Oh,
Do
also,
you want to say what
earlier
your
people
point
were
was in
saying-
that, Jake?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I just wanted like it was just
Okay.
really cool getting more Elokar because I have a video about Elokar where I was like,
He's setting up
from his
people going to watch the
perspective,
video.
there's like a lot of this looks really
Just
different when
farming
you
for
think of it from
views.
Elokar. Yes, go watch
Typical
that.
Jake.
Yes,
Jake, you should
correct.
edit this video and put one of like the little tags up at the top and just like so
Yeah.
that it will link to the Elokar video.
Sorry, I have to do something that
the brother that Kaladin killed, Shallan's brother that Kaladin killed, is the half brother. It is mentioned in Wind and Truth for the first time. It is extremely what?
Did you see
Oh,
this
I saw
comment?
this comment. I did see this
Yeah.
comment. It is
And now-
extremely like blink or you miss it. So I understand why people might miss it or get confused, but it does seem like Hilarion was a half brother to Shallan.
Also, no one send this time stamp to Zin. Make him watch the entire thing.
Nobody talks to
Thanks.
Zin.
Well, if you're on the Discord, whatever. That's fair. Maybe Zin's got more connections than you know about. You don't know.
So true. These two don't know what we're talking about at all. So
Yeah,
I'm
this
just
is a
saying.
random
Oh,
person.
I
Yeah.
do. I'm gonna be messaging him right now.
See, he knows more people than you think.
Okay.
Anyway, there are more plots. I guess we actually haven't talked about is there more on the Dalinar stuff? I mean,
just like we didn't really talk about the end. We mostly talked about spiritual realm in general.
that's
I
true.
feel
We
like
didn't talk about the whole Sunmaker's Gambit stuff, which I thought
Yeah.
was cool as shit. That was set up extremely well and makes a lot of sense. And I did not see coming at all. But as soon as he did it, I was like, one of my concerns going into this, a lot of other people, it seems like they wanted this, and I feel like are disappointed this didn't happen. Every Stormlight Sanderlanche fundamentally has been good guys are about to lose. Someone has an internal revelation, swears an oath, a bunch of other shit happens, but that fundamentally turns the tide. And I was like, all right, we've done that 4 times. It's awesome all 4 times. At some point, if I know that's going to happen, it's going to become less awesome. And I'd been like, I still, going into this one, I was not sure if that was going to happen. But if that happened for this one, I'm like, next Sanderlanche, I'm like, all right, this is just going to be what's going on. And this way of turning things around was such a novel way of ultimately turning the tide in what was, I would say, the main central conflict at this point in the novel. And I really liked it.
Yeah, it makes me more like, because I've been having a basically personal meltdown ever since the back from the break from 5 to 6 was announced to be so long.
Me too.
But with but with that ending, it kind of was like, oh, so this is all playing into all these new books we're going to get. I'm assuming, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was executed really well. But I will say, Jake, I do think at the risk of like going into Cosmere stuff, there is still a end pattern in Cosmere series.
Oh yeah, there is.
That
it was similar to something else.
Thing is happening.
Sure.
Yeah.
I will say my problems with
yes,
Wind and
I
Truth.
agree.
Yes, it totally works.
Yeah, I think so.
And maybe it would work better actually because you haven't seen it play out in some.
Yeah,
of the
I was thinking that because like I really liked, like I like it a lot. That all the stuff, I think what it sets up is really good. The moment it was happening, I think I sent Bookborn a text being like, "This has happened before," or like something similar has happened before. So it really does feel samey in one very specific sense. So
yeah, so I get what people think. Oh no, I just
want to say something because Christian said this really quick. Like I also was really like, wow, when I saw how long it was until Stormlight 6. But after my issues with 5 that we all kind of share, I like actually am more excited about that break because I really hope when he goes back to it, he is like rested and ready to take the years it's going to take to make Stormlight 6. And so like in some ways, like that space, I think I'm kind of happy. I'm like, I think he can write all this stuff that's easier for him and get it out. And maybe when he returns to Stormlight, he'll be so refreshed that like some of these issues we're seeing with like editing and maybe pushing it forward too fast will kind of be fixed because he has like a new life for it. So like that's the one thing I'll say about the big.
Also, I'm excited. I forget what Discord user it was, but they were like, I'm writing down everyone who said this book caused them to DNF the Cosmere and they're not reading any more Sanderson. And if they got Stormlight 6 reviews when it comes out,
It was Mitch.
Screenshot. Thank you, Mitch. Screenshots will be posted. But I do want to answer this more in depth than just saying yes. Because I feel like this, like to me at first, like my instinct was just like, yes, obviously. But this does seem to be a common sentiment, and I feel like came up with Lost Metal when shard-related conflicts come up. People feel like you, like when other shards come into play, that you have to be Cosmere connected. And this is a great follow-up comment because the random gods we've barely heard of that are going to solve this problem are the random gods we've barely heard of if we have read the Cosmere. We already know that the other shard we're aware of, who I'm not going to say their name, would be interested in solving this problem, but couldn't do it. The shards who have been ignoring the problem are the ones we don't know anyways. So whether like there's more Cosmere stuff, that doesn't change stuff. But also like, even so, just knowing that there are a bunch of other powerful beings out there, you don't need to know of them specifically for it to be satisfying, both from a narrative arc standpoint of Dalinar realizing that the only way he can win is to put other people in the solution to solve it in the future and to trust them. And also that it is like was foreshadowed by Adolin with the Sunmaker Gambit, and it makes sense that it would be effective. It's like it's the opposite criticism we have with like the Shallan Taravangian argument, where it's like it doesn't make sense that these arguments would be effective. In this case, like as a solution, it makes sense that it would be like it's extremely hard to think of, but makes sense in long term. Anyway,
Also,
I also
just
just want to say, you go first, Cal.
I was just gonna say, like people get really like when you have more knowledge, it's really hard to scale down the amount of knowledge that you would not have and how you would react to that. Like people are really good at filling in context or just like anticipating. So and then because we're all aware that the Cosmere exists, I think people tend to get very worried about what that means and overreact to like the missing gaps of information. I've told this story before and I will tell it forever because I think it's a very good illustration of something that I think the fandom overdeals with, which is I saw somebody, yes, on Reddit, but it is a thing that happens. They skipped Dawn Shard before reading Rhythm of War, and they went around telling everybody in this thread that you can't skip Dawn Shard because Rhythm of War makes no sense, and that they were missing so many things, and there was all this context they were missing from Dawn Shard. And then I commented, and I was like, there's like literally, like quite literally, like 1.5 lines from Dawn Shard that are kind of relevant. And this person goes, no, I feel like I'm missing a lot of stuff from Dawn Shard because this book doesn't make sense. And what's clearly what they were doing is they were worrying the whole time. They were like, I don't understand this. It must be in Dawn Shard. I don't understand this. Must be in Dawn Shard, because they were aware that Dawn Shard exists. And the reason this ties in to what Zamar is asking is that he's aware that the Cosmere exists and that all these shards, like he's aware of all that information. So then he's worrying about, oh, if somebody doesn't have this information, how are they going to react to it? But you're just gonna be like, okay, there's these gods, and I guess I'll find out in book 6 what this means. Like, we're maybe assuming that the problem is going to be solved in Elantris 3. I don't think the problem is going to be solved in Elantris 3. I think Stormlight 10 is going to continue all the stuff that started in Stormlight 1, and that will be a whole series like it has been the whole time, you know?
Well, and piggybacking off of that, I also just feel like for some reason this issue seems to be a lot more related to Stormlight than any other series. And I don't know if it's because fans care so much more about Stormlight, but people freak out about the Stormlight shards. And it's like, do they forget that a big plot point in Mistborn Era 1 is shards? Like, that's a big plot point. And so people get it in Mistborn. They get that there's these gods and it's fine. But like somehow we get to Stormlight and we're like, no one could possibly understand about these shards and gods. And it's like, we've literally been talking about like honor since book 1. Like, I don't like, there's context for all of this. I don't think introducing the idea of more shards is going to suddenly floor somebody who's just read Stormlight. I think it'll be like a very natural progression. I don't think that's confusing. And so it doesn't matter that they don't know the references to these other shards. It literally doesn't matter. And the story I always bring up a million times, as Kyle knows, since he has one he brings up, my dad read Sunlit Man, having not read a single Stormlight book. And he was like, yeah, it was great. It was really entertaining. Nice. And I was like, well, what did you think about when Sigil is thinking about Kaladin? Like, because they don't mention Kaladin. I'm like, oh, that's a big moment. It's Kaladin. And he was like, well, it's clearly like his old captain. Like, he's like, it makes sense. Like, he's thinking about an old captain. And I'm like, oh, so you mean like you're a reader and you like can get like contextual clues about stuff? Yeah. And so like, I just think, like Kyle said, you have so much knowledge and you think it's more vital to the story than it really is. And like, someone talked to me after our FAQ panel at Dragonsteel Con, and they were like, I'm one of those people who read Stormlight before Warbreaker. And when I got to Warbreaker, I was stoked. I was like, I didn't know there was a prequel about Nightblood. And like, so to that person, it was now a prequel, which is like a little funny, but like,
right.
They were just like, wow, I loved Nightblood and Stormlight, and now I get more Nightblood. Like it. So, okay, they didn't read the end of Words of Radiance and have that, oh my gosh moment. But then to them, their oh my gosh moment was just moved to when Nightblood showed up in Warbreaker, and they were like, oh my gosh, Nightblood's in this? And so it's like, we have to stop being so connected to the experience we had, because it's just a different experience.
I'm going to piggyback off both of you guys. Sorry, Jake. Where like Stormlight was my first Cosmere book. I didn't know anything about the Cosmere. And I remember there is, I think it's in the Way of Kings, Dalinar has a vision in the spiritual realm, and he sees like those 3 dots in the sky, which I believe now are the shards. And that set, like, I was like, oh, clearly I don't understand what the heck's going on, but that's really cool. So I just think if you're a Stormlight only reader, but like you said, Bookborn, we do know about the shards. I feel like you can kind of connect those dots. At the same time as that, I think everyone's just going to have a different Cosmere experience. And I think when you enjoy something, you want someone to enjoy it the way you enjoyed it. And I do understand that. But I'll agree with you two in saying it's a bit too much. Just
also the reason I'm very vocal about this and think it's important to say is because when people hear that it's really important, the order you hear it on, it creates the effect Kyle talked about. Like that happens because people are told it's important.
Yeah.
If everyone was just like, yeah, whatever, it's a couple Easter eggs, no one would be assuming that when they're all the stuff they don't know is Cosmere connections. Like the reason they assume that is because that makes sense if people tell you that the Lost Metal doesn't make sense if you haven't read Rhythm of War. Then anytime you get to something in the Lost Metal that you don't know, you're like, oh my God, I don't get this. But it's not like, okay, it's just a new thing in the Lost Metal.
Like people love Malazan. And like Malazan's conceit is that you don't understand what's happening like 80% of the time. They're just telling you information. You're like, I guess I'll figure that out. And it's like, Sanderson is way different, but like people can read books where they don't know what's going on and it's okay. They just assume, oh, it's magic I don't get, and they move on. Like it's not that big of a deal.
So ironic when Malazan fans complain about the fact that they feel like they need to read the books for the Cosmere connections. Like this happens so much, and I don't understand. It's
what
your
might
favorite
be happening
series.
is like Sanderson is, because of the hard magic and how well thought out and planned it is, there's almost like an effort to figure things out. So you have that expectation to know everything. So it kind of embraces that mentality. It's hard. I see both sides. But in the end,
it was really funny in the Lost Metal when like there's all these new magics and then like Aethers, like none of us had experienced, but then some people were like, yeah, like I don't understand all these magic systems. Like how am I supposed? It's unruly of me to have to know, to just not know these magics. But it's like none of us knew what Aethers did. Like that was all of us together learning about it in that moment. So
I do want to say though, like, oh my gosh, fantasy. I don't like that wasn't a bad comment. I feel like we feel like it piled on.
He knows. Zamar's a friend. Zamar's a friend. He's all good. Yeah.
I feel like your comment was totally justified, and I thought it was very
yeah. This was a follow-up. There's a conversation in the comments where he was kind of like, yeah, I mostly agree, but like he asked in the comments like, but maybe like wouldn't the end not hit as much? And I was like, I really disagree. So I think I was expecting to have this conversation where I had already said that.
I feel like we piled on and thought that was a bad comment.
He's a good lad.
Okay.
No, I watched his critique of Wind and Truth, and for a lot of it, I'm like, yeah, I totally understand it. It's just like some of that stuff, I go into Sanderson almost expecting it, so it doesn't bother me as much.
I haven't
but
watched his review
great
yet because I
take.
tried not to watch too much before this, but I'm gonna go back and watch it because Zamar's awesome.
I
You
know,
guys should all go check out his channel. Oh my god, fantasy.
I watched like one other review that like I just randomly came up. I was at work. I needed something in the background and I saw it and I clicked it and it just like completely agreed with me. And it was while I was arguing in the comments with people and it was so validating. And I was like, this is my new person. And then I saw their next thumbnail and it was them holding up a book with overrated big question mark. And I was like, A2 Brutus, A2. Anyway.
We haven't talked about Kaladin and Szeth yet.
Yeah. That's a pretty important plot point.
One real fast thing. My wife asked how long this was going to be, and I was like, "Oh, like an hour and a half, 2 hours." She's like, "So 3 hours." I'm like, "No, it won't."
She knows. Did you even my lives? Have you considered that I suck at ending live shows, and we haven't even gotten to the part where I'm trying to ending live shows yet? Like, I need to be stopped.
That's true. We should start ending it now.
Yeah.
So that we'll hit the 3 hour mark.
We're gonna end really soon, guys. We just have to very quickly talk about Kaladin and Szeth.
Quickly.
And then 6 other things. So Szeth, do we want to do Kaladin and Szeth and the Szeth flashbacks at the same time, or separate?
I think they tie in together, personally.
Okay. So Kaladin clearly character assassinated, right? Clearly. I've seen this comment like multiple times. I think I've since learned that there was a really long rant about using those words on like the 17th chart or whatever. And I'm like, the YouTube comments are regurgitating something someone else said. It all makes sense. There's such a specific wording that just doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry for people who believe it. That's not what character assassination means. I do feel bad. Like if you've loved Kaladin's plot up to here and you read it and you're like, I don't care about this. Like that sucks. It's also not what character assassination means, but this
was the thing I thought was going to be controversial. Everyone was asking.
Yeah, you did say this.
Spoiler review.
You told me this, and I will back you up that you called this whole storm.
Yeah, I said I thought this would be the controversial thing because, and it's funny because when I said that on my non-spoiler review, everyone was like, "Oh, were you talking about Renarin and R'lain?" And I was like, "I wasn't." And it's depressing that that's what people think is controversial. But no, the controversial is just like, if you are someone who loved Kaladin being a bad A all the time and fighting, you are going to struggle in this novel with him taking such a back seat. And like that's going to be difficult perhaps to deal with. And I expected like people who want Kaladin as the classic fighter, it's going to be tough not to see him fight basically this entire novel. Now for me, like I thought it was very satisfying. Like it's such an interesting change, especially at the end when he's like, well, I guess I am a fighter. I just had to like discover all the parts of myself. That was very satisfying to me. And I maintain that Kaladin standing up under the pain is a top Cosmere moment.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
So good.
Also, him dancing with Syl was incredibly emotional. I think that was like the first moment that brought tears to my eyes in the book.
Yeah, that might have been my favorite scene actually in the book. I loved the Kaladin stuff, to be honest. I loved him learning the flute. I loved him stumbling with Szeth. And the thing is, like, I think there's two camps about this therapy thing. And some people think he's not good enough at it, but I like that he was pretty terrible. Because he has no idea what he's doing.
Sorry, finish your thought, Christian. Sorry.
But like him, it's funny. It's almost comical to watch because when the amazing scene when Szeth finds the toy of Molly and he's crying, amazing, right? And Kaladin totally fumbles. He's like, "Oh, so you had a brother." Just like me, of course. Like, of course, it's all clicking. I'm like, dude, no, no. But that's
wonderful.
That works.
Wonderful.
That works,
Yeah.
I didn't have a problem with that. Yeah.
I particularly loved when he goes to Ishar and then like he's like the voyage of the Dawn Treader, and then Ishar's like blah blah, and he's like Fleet died of starvation halfway across, like, and he's just, and then I could almost visually imagine like Kaladin's face just tearing every single time.
It felt like me
I liked that he wasn't very good at it. It felt more realistic.
Yeah. It was me telling my theories to Jake. Like, Jake, this is Kremlin. No.
For sure.
You were right about the two big ones, though.
I think you're right. Like, it was good that he was bad at it. Because, like, why would he be good at it? He just recognizes that something he needed wasn't there. And so now he feels like it's his job to do that for other people. But, like, where do you even begin?
Also, I feel like Szeth has kind of, like, to get Szeth to being in a state of being where he's in a healthy mind state would require a really good therapist. But he's in such a messed up state right now. To just get some improvement, I don't actually feel like the bar is that high. Like, you know, like he didn't know he needed someone to talk to. I joked really early in this book that I was like, wow, I've really liked this character for like 4 books. And it took the 5th book for me to learn that he's a total dick. Like when Kaladin was trying to be helpful and he was just like shitting on him. I was just like, wow, this guy's just an asshole.
You predicted that.
I knew he
that from the
beginning. Like I knew he murdered people, but I didn't know he was a dick.
He didn't know he was unpleasant. Okay,
Yeah.
like
I am.
The
I
Kaladin
think
like
flashbacks
Szeth.
are some of the best flashbacks, and I'll stand by it. I loved.
They're my
That's
favorite. Yeah,
so much.
they're my favorite flashbacks.
I literally like every time I reread the flashbacks, I end up liking the last one I reread more. So I just know that like Rhythm of War has the worst flashbacks, and then I can rank the other 4 in any order. I want to talk about Szeth. So my profile is Szeth, and this was the Szeth book that I've been excited for a long time, and it to me like completely delivered. I think the Szeth stuff was so good, and like when I'm talking about like some of the people who have gotten less focus in the past, I felt were so good in this book, which I think those people getting more focus was a disappointment for them. But Szeth, like I've obviously wanted more Szeth. I think not only is he an incredibly interesting conception for a character, I also think he has some of the strongest voice.
Vermillionaire thinks that Szeth's dad is bad, and that is like an S or an F tier take to me because I love Szeth's dad.
I loved Szeth's dad. That was like probably some of my first moving moments when like I was very moved by Szeth's dad like refusing and literally like destroying their whole family because he would not give up on Szeth. That was like moving.
Yeah, no, all of the Szeth family stuff really worked for me. And if I'm going to be honest, if somebody had sat me down before reading Wind and Truth, or even after reading the first 2 Szeth flashbacks, which we had earlier, and we're like, do you think the like Szeth family drama is going to hit? I would be like, it's probably going to be fine. But it was really good. Like I loved it. And like when he first fights his sister, I could kind of see that coming. Like I'm like, oh, probably his dad is going to be involved. But it just really worked for me.
Yeah, and it all culminated in that fight against his dad, and you see him fighting the tears in that moment. That got me.
Mm-hmm.
That got me.
I think also what I liked about Szeth's background is Sanderson has done a lot of explorations about religion in like all of his novels, and still like, I mean, we see it with a character in Mistborn Era 1. I'm going to try to not spoil things, but like Mistborn Era 1, like religious stuff is like a huge plot point for them. And it's a plot point for Jasna, and it's a plot point for Dalinar, and it's a plot point for all these people. And yet I still feel like Szeth's religious plot point felt new and interesting and fresh and different than any other religious plot point we've gotten before, which I think is like shows how good Sanderson is at like very different views of those sorts of struggles. Because I did like particularly find it interesting when like Szeth as a kid is like so devout. And then he had like his parents were like, well, what if we just like moved the rock though? And that's like hard for him. And then he's like, we know he takes the oath so seriously, or his oath stone. And like, I don't know. I just thought that was I really resonated with it.
When like he keeps just like trying to follow instructions, and like I was so frustrated for him, like in a good way. Oh, he was relatable. What? Not really, but I mean, yeah, I just love them. Like there were I loved his plan to get like rid of the people and defend the border, and then people get really mad at him. I was just like, I felt his rage. I felt rage for him. And I've just found him such a captivating character instantly. Do you guys like, am I crazy for thinking he is like just better writing in his point of view and like the strongest voice of any of the main point of views?
I think there's no humor in his like there's no silliness. He's just playing it straight laced for 5 books. So probably. The only time there's ever any humor in a Szeth POV, and it might not have even been in his POV, was with like Lift and Szeth at the end of Oathbringer.
When he threw the spoon.
And I think
And the spoon. Yeah.
that was so
I
funny.
meant up to this point.
Okay.
Like, but yeah,
Right.
like it's more so that I think you probably feel that way. Like I don't think the writing is in and of itself better. I think the things that tend to jar people are when Sanderson is really goofy in POVs, and he just doesn't do that in Szeth. So I guess yes, it is. But
I also feel like aside from that, like just in terms of like descriptive and tone, I feel like it's just more distinct. Like
Maybe
a lot of the other people, I don't think Sanderson has like the mega strength where it's like, you give me a description with like the names cut out and I'm like, yeah, I know whose internal voice this is. But Szeth, I'm pretty sure I would. Taravangian as well. And obviously Lift. But Lift cheats because Lift, he does it by everything is like over the top.
everything's DV.
Yeah. Yeah, I never went back and checked this. Does anyone know?
Oh yeah, that.
No, I don't think he hasn't had a
Best
stream
acting
yet.
scene?
Like he has to have
Yeah.
He's been too much.
Yeah.
He's been too focused on the criticism to tell us spoilers. He's just been telling us about his
Did you
writing
guys
process.
pick up on the orcs thing when you got Seth's spren number? Did you put that together straight away?
Literally immediately. Like I suspected it actually in Sunlit Man, but I don't have proof because I never voiced it. I was like, it's just the only high spread we know. And then the moment I was like 99.9% sure is the moment that the high spread was like, I want to learn therapy too. I was like, this is for sure auxiliary. And then he was just winking at the camera so much. He's like, you are an auxiliary to a human.
Yeah.
So this is an
I didn't
example.
know it immediately like Kyle, but I did know that it was Oxen by
So
hand.
I forgot 98% of the details of the Sunlit Man. So didn't. So this is because this for me was as
Well,
if
you
I
know,
hadn't
Jake,
read the Sunlit.
I thought we were supposed to all be credible here, and you aren't very credible. So.
But no, Bookborn said that we just have to admit I was wrong, and then I admitted that I was wrong about that. So
Okay.
I also just thought the action scenes where he used the various powers were really cool.
Yeah, like it was video gamey, but I didn't care. I liked it. I liked going to each boss battle. and
It also
bursting.
it had the similar vibe of like in Way of Kings when Kaladin picks up the spear and it's kind of like, oh yeah, like I did this, like this is cool. Him getting to use the powers again was great. And also he had the similar thing for Adolin where my man Kaladin got some respect when he mentioned he's like Szeth found his equals in people like Kaladin. I was like,
oh yeah,
that's my
respect.
boy. And then Talon's like, I found my equals in absolutely no one.
And
Also,
also the Nightblood character growth. Sorry to interrupt, but that was totally unexpected. That Nightblood was going to be talking with Blades and learning.
I am very conflicted about this. So here's the thing: I think the idea that Nightblood can change and the end goal of like what this could mean and where it could go, I really liked. I think Nightblood is undergoing a little bit of Flanderization. So people who don't know, it's like, you have like one character tribute and then over time they write more for that character tribute. So then it only becomes that. And this is the first time I felt that where like the first 70% of the book when Nightblood is just talking, he's just like absurd. Like I just even more absurd than Nightblood has been before. I just feel like he's acting too silly in comparison to how silly he's acted before. But I do really like that he's like learning from the Honor Blades, and then like all the stuff at the end with Nightblood is really good. So
everyone was a little too silly in this book for me. So I'm going to agree with you, Kyle. Like I think everyone got a little silliness, and it was like, why is everyone suddenly a little silly? Like,
that's a good way to put it.
Like it was bizarre. Like everyone was just like everyone's silliness level was stepped up one. So if you had no silliness, suddenly you had a little, and if you were already silly, you got like a little too much silly.
Actually, I disagree with you. Lift got less silly by a significant degree. She went down 2 silliness tiers.
Well, so he had to take the silliness from somewhere. I guess there's like
conservation of silliness. He's a big science guy.
I'll just take it from here and then sprinkle it across to everybody.
Silliness is actually like the laws of energy. Like energy cannot be created or destroyed.
It's conservation of silliness. Yeah.
It's like conservation of mass.
Yeah. That totally checks out. Because it hasn't come up, but like so I agree for Nightblood. I think a lot of time when Nightblood is silly in other books, he's ironically silly, where it's silly in the context of if a person said it, but he means it completely sincerely, and that's just his nature. And it feels like in this, it's actually like it's Nightblood being silly from Nightblood's perspective, almost. Which is
like when
weird.
He's like, "Can we bring snacks?" That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really
that
interested.
Also might be true.
Oh yeah, that is an interesting. I think it's interesting that a lot of the focus of the end of this novel was investiture can change. So can a shard change? Okay, so like they're trying to, can honor change what honor means? Syl obviously has been growing for like 3 books. It's been like Syl wants to be more of a person. We got all of the unoathed Spren because they want to retain autonomy. And then we have Nightblood suddenly deciding not to kill Kaladin, which is like a huge change from how we've seen Nightblood. So like I wonder what the overall, like that's one of the biggest Cosmere things for me is like, what does it mean that we're trying to change investiture? It's like the first time I've doubted, I still don't doubt it. I think Ado will be like recombined, but like for a moment I was like, oh, are we just going to try to change the shards so they don't have such like a singular meaning instead? Or like, I don't know. I was curious about that.
By the way, everything is sentient because Spren. So, yes.
I wonder, do you guys think we're going to get more like breaking off from the shards like we have with Honor, forming its own being? Like as the child?
I think we're too early into the Cosmere. Like I know we're at the halfway point, but like I don't think this would be brought up now if it's never going to be a thing with another shard. Like I think it will somehow be another shard will gain send, or like we'll learn that they all are. But I think all is probably too many. But like I could see like Mistborn Era 4 or like Dragonsteel or something far in the Cosmere where like another shard changes its intent from like growing for so long, right?
Because the biggest question I have is who the heck is Noadon? Like that's like I still what is he exactly with his bread and his butter? Don't know.
Yeah, no doubt.
Know. Yeah,
that's a good question.
You were like, I'm running out of mysteries. Go figure that out.
Yeah.
Death rattles. Check chapter names.
Nightblood is a good transition to Lift and Zahel being together, which, man, okay, the Lift interlude, gas, absolute incredible. When she rescues Vasher, and then he's like, you're like the most awesome thing to ever awesome. And she's like, I've been telling people I've been awesome. Let's go.
He's like, have you ever seen someone in shard play for the first time? Because she's all like, I always slip. These other edge dancers, they're so much more graceful. I'm just dumb. And so I was like, you're just two built different, Lift. And then Lift's like, that actually does have the ring of truth to it. I think my favorite Lift internal bit of thought in the entire series is, probably someone should tell him that like revenge isn't going to be that fulfilling, but he was 5, which didn't end up coming back to bite anyone. I just later, by the way.
Oh my god, I didn't remember that line. Yeah,
I love that.
Can you retell me the line?
So Gavinor is talking to Lift about how he's going to become the best swordsman ever and get revenge for his dad Elokar. And Lift is like, someone should probably tell him that like revenge isn't actually that good and it won't solve anything and it won't bring you problems. But he was 5 and like that's not what he needed to hear right now. So Lift was kind of just like, go get him. You do that, become the best swordsman and get revenge for your father thing. Which never came up again.
What
if Noadon is just the Bombadil of the Stormlight we just never learned? It's not a style.
I mean, there is some theories because we see this whole thing about like no one knows what the heck they're talking about, this 4th moon and all that stuff. And like I'm convinced it's Ado's god metal. Because that's what my current theory is.
Oh, that's cool.
Christian's like, I can
officially lost me. You guys, god metal is like some sort of special thing where like you say it and my brain just turns off. Like I'm just like, we're done. I get up and walk away mentally. Like I don't know what you're talking about at all. Yeah, but I'm glad you're happy.
But yeah, that's another one. The moon and Noadon. We don't really have any explanation for those two. Yeah. No. Add it to the list to look into.
So Shallan.
That's probably a better change of conversation than what I was going to say.
I mean, I'm a little curious, but okay.
What were you going to say, Jake?
I was going to be like, so Christian, if you were at Dragonsteel and we were trying to come up with spoiler questions, what would yours going to be? Because I was curious just what he would cook up.
Oh, man. We're going to be here all night.
Well, the thing is, like, I've been harping on about the same annoying stuff for so long, and then they just happened. Like, I feel like I don't know what to do with myself when the baby champion happened and Shallan's mom happened.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the baby champion.
You are where Jasna is, where like her whole life is now like she is just she doesn't know what to do with herself anymore.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I probably would ask him about what I put forth at the beginning of the stream about these chapter titles, because they're all about seeing the future, and the only one I can remember that I don't have an answer for was just simply called Puppet, but I don't know what to make of that. So I would probably ask about that.
Cool. Thanks for your input. Okay, moving on to Shallan. I guess. So I have seen people not like the Shallan. This was Words of Radiance is my favorite Shallan book. This is my second favorite Shallan book.
It's not mine.
I quite enjoyed. Well, it has what's like Shallan seeing her mom in the spiritual realm. Legit, might be my favorite Shallan moment in the series. I like that she was slightly less messed up than she was in the previous two. I mean, you know, she's not great. Maybe we just have the Szeth chapters for comparison. And I'm like, well, she's less messed up than that guy. I also quite enjoyed the climax of her stabbing Formless in the face and being like, and
I like
how
that
she
part
figured
too.
that out. I don't think it's like the most one full of substantial events, but like, okay, what would your what would be your ranking of the books from a perspective of Shallan? Is Words of Radiance one for everyone? I feel like it's weird if Words of Radiance isn't one.
I like Words of Radiance and Rhythm of War better for her.
I can see that. I did really like Rhythm of War,
my thing with Shallan, I really like the end because like the whole thing is that she worries about Formless reappearing, and that's her. And then at the end, she's like, "No, actually, I'm confident enough in myself that I have gotten better." Can you guys hear me? Did I freeze?
Yes, I was about to say. I almost interrupted you. Say you did freeze, but we can hear you.
Okay. For Formless to be like is not real, and her being confident enough to know that, that really landed for me. A lot of my issues with her is the Ghost Bloods. I didn't like the Ghost Bloods in this book pretty much at all. It would be my only actual criticism of the plot of the novel. I don't have like anything good to say about the Ghost Bloods in particular in this book. I could either be like it was fine or I didn't like it, and that's about it. Because Mraize and Ayatol just don't really do anything for the whole book. Like I know Mraize shows up. Like I know at the end we find out what they were trying to do, kind of, but they're just not there. And she spends the whole book worrying about them. And then Ayatol just dies. And then Mraize is just like a generally disappointing character. And then we finally get a POV from him, and it does essentially nothing. Like I know it does give us a little bit about his like internal feelings for Shallan, but I don't feel like. I guess I'm a little confused why we got that POV and why it didn't really accomplish anything. But I do like where the Ghost Bloods are set up vis-a-vis against Shallan right now. So, anybody else?
Yeah, I'll agree that I found them quite disappointing as well from a plot perspective, just because the Ghost Bloods are one of the biggest mysteries, not only in this series, but the entire Cosmere. So I was expecting some crazy Mraize revelation. And when we had that moment in the spiritual realm.
There he is.
In the
I'm
spiritual
a little
realm.
left out. Should I also leave and come back and call myself cognitive bookborn?
It's a hive mind thing, guys. Kyle knows. But when we had the scene with Mraize and in the spiritual realm, and he was sitting on like a giant some sort of crustacean, I was like, oh, this is the moment that we learn that he was, I don't know, raised by chasm fiends. I don't know, something interesting. But then he just died. So I don't know. I found that to be a bit of a letdown. I don't know about you guys, but I just wanted more from him. After all these years, hey Carl, I just said Mraize was disappointing too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
the
care
hive
that
mind
much
is
about
intact.
Kyle, you have to change your name to Cognitive Kyle now. That's what happens if you.
Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, Kaladin is technically a cognitive shadow now.
I do
so
love
you
how we're
could
just
say
slowly
Herald Kyle.
promoting Bookborn to the top. We're just like,
That's
yeah.
so true. Yeah.
So you could also be like Herald or Herald of something. It's up to you.
I guess that's more thematic.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jake. I'm gonna have to go soon, mate.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
too.
fine. This has gone 2.5 hours. I was about to joke that it's like, oh, he left after 2.5 hours. That's how long he said it would take to Jess maximum. So, you know, Herald of Good Takes.
Jess doesn't get upset though. She just shakes her head. She's just like, I told you. Yeah, my last thought on the Shallan thing is just that like I wish that Mraize was a better foil for her, but I don't really know how to fix that. That would be the last thoughts I have on it.
Yeah, that's fair. I enjoyed Shallan's character. I don't care that much about the Ghost Bloods, which if they were more interesting,
That's fair.
probably
Yeah, like
would
I
care
think
about
Shallan's internal arc was really good.
Herald of Good Takes is kind of funny. Someone commented on it. Okay. So is that all the plot lines? Have we discussed every single moment in Wind and Truth in great detail and we didn't forget a single one?
We definitely forgot interludes, but that's fine.
We talked about some of the important interludes, like Moash and
the interludes are plot relevant now.
Yeah,
they count.
Risen,
yeah,
did nothing in this book, but was really cool anyway. I love Risen. I want a Risen novel.
She went to
I know we got done. No, you don't understand. I want her to be more important than she's been lately, is what I mean.
Okay.
You're right.
She in the middle of her TED talk got interrupted by two primal forces of the universe being too close together. I hate it when that happens. That's so related, so relatable. This was cool. This was the one we had before that
cool.
I hadn't actually listened to because it was Sanderson's narration. And
see, I wanted more of those interludes.
Yeah, that interlude was dope, and also the one with Axes the Collector was great.
Yeah,
he's cool too. Yeah. Also, we finally got the answer of what Vasher was doing in Rhythm of War, which was getting tortured. So we should have saw that coming. Which I know we talked about Vasher and Lift, but it was a thing. People were like, why didn't Vasher do anything during the occupation of the tower in Rhythm of War? Plot hole, Sanderson forgot about. Nope, he's just being tortured. It's all okay. Yeah, I guess we can wrap things up. So I'm not good at wrapping up streams. Does anyone have any final thoughts they want to say?
You got a couple trolls. It's like there are a lot of valid criticisms of the novel. I think we gave some of them, but there's also valid criticisms of people who sincerely didn't like the book. I'm just saying, like, you can tell when the comments are trolly. Like, it's just like, some people are just like, they write a comment and I'm like, but you're not seriously engaging. Like, I don't care that you disliked the book, but like, I get comments where people dislike the book and it's like clearly sincere. Like, it's like, I didn't like it and here's why. And it's like sincere reasons, even if I don't agree with them, but just like popping in and being like, Sanderson's gone woke. Like, I'm not going to be able to like seriously engage with you on that sort of criticism. So I think I just want to make that clear. Like, it's not criticism that I think any one of us cares about. Like, I think there are people I know and really like who I thought had very thoughtful critiques and it didn't work for them. But it's just like, you've got to have some level of like ability to engage if you're really going to want to be taken seriously.
Also, you can tell like some people watched my review and commented the things they disagreed with. And some people really wanted to write a 1-star Goodreads review of the book, but they were like, then no one will see it. So instead they commented on my video without referencing literally anything I said. And I'm just like, why are you doing this, guys? Like, rethink choices that you've made. Like,
I also am just like not a fan of people like coming on reviews or streams where like people are like very positive and not like Bookborn said, if you disagree and you want to discuss it, like Zamar disagreed with us on stuff, super fine. There's plenty of comments I've seen, but people that just come in and be like, you know what these people need to hear? How much this book sucked. Like, just, I don't get it. Like, but that's just the internet, I suppose, but it never ceases to just surprise me.
Thank you for coming on, everyone. You were all a joy to have. I definitely the amount of I had requests from dozens and dozens of people to come on this, and I told them all I already got the best 3. So
you insulted immediately, saying that we had no idea what we were talking about. So
hey! One of these people he told not to come on was Jimmy. I heard. Okay, he was like, Jimmy, you're just not qualified for this, man.
They can't cross over. It just we don't know what would happen.
Ben was like, hey, is anyone doing a Stormlight chat? And I was like, I kind of forgot about Ben when I was inviting people. And then they did their own thing with Pete.
Which I'm going to go watch later because I didn't want to watch before this and just say the same things. So
thank you for having a great example of being someone with a great example of critical comments that were good to engage in. You were the gold standard.
Just like a normal comment.
Appreciate
Congratulations on being a normie. I bet you like Sarah J. Maas.
That was kind of funny. So yeah,
you're almost there, Jake. You can do it.
Have a good day, everyone. I'm clicking end stream.
Bye, everybody.